Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as we come to you from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. What's going on, man?
Hello, friend. Hello.
I'm doing good. I'm feeling good this morning.
Feeling good, looking good?
Yeah, I'm kind of getting over the little sinus thing I had last week, and we're getting there.
Was it what they called debilitating over time, or?
I wouldn't call it debilitating. It was a nuisance.
Yeah.
It's like one of those nagging injuries, one of those hammies.
When you no, those are the worst. That cost your boy his first. Well, I think being a bad player cost me too, but this is very much a hindrance in Carolina.
Didn't help at all.
No,
you got to watch out for those,
especially as a guy that actually spent a little time conditioning and training, getting ready for my test. Because those the test, the in shape test, and they're hard.
The combine number, or no, the conditioning test.
Yeah, for when you actually get to camp, they suck.
You have to do this many hundreds and however many.
Yeah, so I think, and they're all a little different, but
right.
Like in Carolina, it's either 10 or 14. I think it was maybe 14, 10, by position group. So they added 3/10 to no, it was 5/10 to your average 40 times.
Okay,
as a group. So we had to do all our 40s, and I think it was 4.96 or better.
And you had to do, 10 of them?
With 40 seconds rest in between.
Oh, that gets tough in a hurry.
Yeah.
So
you're down, jog back, 40 seconds is going by the time you're done.
Yeah.
You got to be ready to go again, then again, then again, then again, then again. Yeah, it was. I don't miss those.
You don't miss it?
I'm like, can we go back to doing this the slow 300-yard shuttle at Lincoln? It's
I was like, can you guys
25 and back, down, back, down, back, down, back, and you had to do it by position group, and I can't even remember what our
Really?
Dante Jones could go down and back, it seemed like, in 10 seconds.
That's probably not a real number, but I get what, the perception of it.
It's not far off. Somebody smart, there's some other guys that probably would remember.
Yeah.
But he was the worst pace horse ever.
Oh, yeah.
His fitness was incredible.
It's like
he was a 200 guy in La Plata. Is it La Plata or La Plata, Maryland, Shane? La Plata?
I would guess La Plata, but I don't know.
I think it's.
I don't know.
I really don't know.
Dwayne Wiles. There was a couple guys. Derek Chandler hooped. He was from just around the corner.
There's a good amount of talent in Maryland, Virginia, that DMV area.
Yeah, I know. That's why everybody thinks Virginia and Virginia Tech. And
see, I don't think of Virginia Tech. I think of Maryland. I think Maryland should be better.
Maryland recruits well, though.
Yeah, but they just don't play very well.
I was looking at the combines, the draft. So the whole DeJean thing had me, because I know this didn't seem. You probably thought I was messing with you.
No, I didn't.
But when you were talking about the white cornerback thing,
yeah,
I hadn't given it much thought, because I don't know if I've seen a mock, and I have to go back. I don't know if I've seen a mock that has him getting past 13.
And that would make sense.
I'm like,
he's an incredible player. He's been great.
Is that a real thing? And I know I saw Compton's. Apparently, people don't have much of a sense of humor either, because Will Compton had a tweet about DeJean not running.
Yeah.
And he kind of got into the stereotypes. And I think people thought
Will was
being serious. Will's not very serious
in general.
Yeah. And especially on social media. There's usually some sort of snark.
Yeah.
But that's why I was pausing.
No, Cooper's.
Does he need? I wouldn't. The more I looked at it, I wouldn't run. I wouldn't. I mean, either. I would wait until
if you're not fully healthy. Absolutely, it's
plus it's a foot. Those things are.
Well, that's the
Run
thing.
DMC. It's tricky,
especially. That's a good reference. Wow. Especially kind of what you were talking about with your guy, Biaka.
Is he really my? Oh yeah, no, this is my guy.
Where he's like, hey, don't let him get you on film injured.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of the same principle here with Cooper. If he's not healthy, he's got more to lose from running that 40 than he has to gain from running that 40. Now, if he's fully healthy and he knows he can get out there and put out a good time, then he's got a lot to gain, I think. because he can put whatever stereotypes to bed, right? Because he is working against like almost 30 years of history at the position now at this point.
Yeah.
Right. So if he knows, if he's healthy, he can train for it, and he knows he can put up a good time, then he should run.
Yeah,
But if all of those things are not true, he's got more to lose the game. Because even if he's drops from 13 to 24, that's not the end of the world. Right. I get it's a lot of money, not the end of the world.
Yeah, I've sat in enough of those, well, 3 to be exact, like meetings with Coach Parker. And this is more on the recruiting end, and he always used clips. That's one of the things that kind of I liked about Coach Parker. DeGene allowed them to do so many things on the back end, and it wasn't complicated. It was just playing percentages and yardage on a field.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Well,
when I tell you down to the yard or two or pre-snap, what's the most least likely throw to be completed, and they know it as a secondary, like they do. I was, as a football guy, not even like as a Nebraska versus Iowa, like I was mesmerized.
Is it just a matter of, hey, they don't have to send help, they don't have to roll anybody over?
Kind of like for us.
Yeah.
No, I won't say anything. Well, who do we play in the non-con? North WS. No, but so generally speaking, like if you have a guy or guys, sometimes it can free up your front 7. Sometimes you can get an extra guy in the box. Sometimes, like if they're in a 3-by side.
Well, because if you don't have to help, you have more options.
Yeah,
right?
we can play games.
It's not just about necessarily,
especially if your quarterback can't run.
Oh, sure, yeah.
That's now you're really.
Because then you don't have to be so cautious about keeping your lanes and keeping containment.
Yep. Who's your pull-up guy?
Yeah.
We call him a flusher, but yeah.
Because we saw that a lot in the Super Bowl, right? Where like Nick Bosa was getting up the field a ton, but if he wasn't keeping his lane, Mahomes broke outside. And Mahomes is good scrambler. Obviously he ran well in that game, but more of a scrambler than a runner, if that makes sense.
That's why there are some teams that we play that if their quarterback is not a threat to pull it down,
you just get after him.
Well, there's a reason that some quarterbacks are always going to struggle against us if they can't play, because like we know what we want to do against 3-by-1s, we know what we want to do against 2-by-2s.
Not to put anybody on blast here, but just from what I saw last year, because I saw you guys a ton last year, would an example of this be, even though he's a talented guy, like Danny Kaelin didn't play super well against you? Is it because he's not super mobile?
Yeah, Bellevue West in a 3-by-1 without a running quarterback is not going to work.
It's not a good matchup for them.
No.
Terrific matchup for your defense.
Like they have in theory. Now you may have a better player.
Sure.
Right. But you're going to have to find where it is, like the matchup. And
schematically what you do defensively, it doesn't lend itself to having
I just think pre-snap statistically we have an advantage.
That makes sense. And that's, again, not to say anything against Danny Kaelin.
It wasn't a Kaelin thing. And it's not like I talked to Coach Huffman, like he knows we know. So it's not we're not fooling him.
Yeah.
You know, he's great. He's funny because he stays on the gas, right? Like he's one of those guys that is constantly always he's tinkering and wants to get better. And he even told me, like flat out before this, he's like, "Hey, I know you guys do something with back to back away and our formations. I just want you to know, like, we're on to you." and you just tip your cap. You're like,
yeah,
okay, yeah, like
you're on to us.
There's just some guy. Well, there's just some guys you enjoy.
Yeah, playing the chess game with.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I just with them and DeGene, I'm thinking. And I remember when he got hurt against Nebraska, and I said, this is 2 years ago 2 years ago. I said, no DeGene, no DeChance, because I think real time, number one, they had to play a pup.
Yeah.
At the corner spot. And Trey Palmer was gonna have
a good day. Yeah.
Now Nebraska almost ran out of time. But like real time losing that guy, I think compromised them.
Well, especially if you don't have time to adjust.
Yeah, and you do some things predicated around
what
that
he does.
skill set. Yeah,
right. It's
having a guy like Jack Campbell. that helped too. But
it's
God.
like when you've got, and this doesn't happen very often, but if Ryan Kalkbrenner gets in foul trouble for Creighton, right?
They would be compromised.
All of a sudden, everything they do defensively has to change.
Yeah.
Whether it's Fred King, whether it's Isaac Trout, whether it's Jason Green, whoever you decide to throw in there, everything has to change because nobody's Ryan Kalkbrenner.
100%.
Now, there's a rumor out there that Creighton might not have to change anything next year either.
What's all these rumors? I can't take.
I mean, do we want to talk about that?
No.
No?
I don't know. I mean, I think the better rumor is not really a rumor. It's because we saw Chattel tweet out yesterday.
Well, so yeah, there's a lot going on with Creighton that could be construed as good news for.
Well, I think it's great.
Well, the MAC thing is for sure.
Yeah, I think.
If you haven't heard, Tom Chattel reported yesterday that sources are saying that Coach McDermott and Creighton are nearing an extension that would, quote, allow him to retire at Creighton.
Yeah, that's good for me. That's good for you.
Terrific for Creighton.
That's great. That's unbelievable for Creighton.
Great for Omaha. It kind of goes back to
if you can lock up a top 10 coach in the country,
absolutely
lock it up.
Well, and we talked about this last week, right? You were a little further away from him staying than I was, but there was a significant chunk for both of us that were like, he might go.
Yeah.
Right. And that was predicated on Creighton is going to have to take care of him. And it appears that's what's happening, right?
Well, just don't be dismissive of the talents.
Well, and
because he turned a good job. He made it a great job.
Oh,
it's zero. Listen, I wouldn't say I'm close. Like, I get along with Coach Altman very well. Known him a long time. And it's no disrespect.
No. But it's a totally different job than it was when he left for Oregon. It's a totally different job.
Coach Mack is the best coach that Creighton has ever had.
And that's kind of what I was trying to get at last week, and I didn't articulate it very well after Creighton beat UConn, right? I think you took it as I was saying it was a bigger win than the Elite Eight. What I was saying was Coach Mack has elevated Creighton as a program.
I got it. I think you were in the moment of I can't believe a school that I've loved this long has come this far.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly it.
I got
that Coach Mack has been able to raise the standard.
Don't let my lack of feedback throw you, because sometimes I'm just thinking.
Yeah, but he has raised the standard of this program. He's raised the bar in this program so much. I mean, we're literally talking about a team that under Altman, if they made the tournament, it was a good year. That was it. That was the bar. Make the NCAA tournament. And honestly, it wasn't even every year. It was like, hey, make it like 2 or 3 out of every 4. Everybody's pretty happy, right? That was kind of the standard. Now, I mean, last year people were literally talking, hey, if you don't make at least the Sweet 16, it's a terrible year.
But here's, the cool thing, though, is that's really pressure's a privilege.
100%.
So
Coach Rule talks about it all the time.
That's actually a cool thing. I think most good coaches understand.
I think they embrace that.
I hear a lot of players now talk about embracing the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I listened to Coach Lamanji yesterday talk in his office, and he was talking about like expectations and what it means. And I mean, he's not like he's threatening the staff, but I mean, basically you do. He's not. You do have to like be on your game, right? Like, sure. What are you bringing to the table?
It's like challenging the staff more.
Just yesterday, a coach at one of the schools here said, "Hey, sorry, I was ripping and running. I've got to get this done, and this done. My bad." It's like, hey, no problem. Do what you do. But what he was talking about was, in essence, staying on the gas. It's like it's February 26th yesterday. Wasn't it the 26th? Yep. And this is what you're doing? Like, interesting. I wonder how many other people around the country
are doing that,
are paying this much attention to detail
on February 26th.
Yeah.
Because it's really easy to pay attention to detail in August, right?
Yeah.
Like that's when you're supposed to.
I heard the greatest line ever yesterday. So I think I can say this. So it's down in Lincoln, and I was spending some time with somebody else on staff because some other things came up. So I was like, oh, okay, he's like, go with such and such. So I was like, cool. Love this dude.
Mhm.
So we sat in there and talked, and he said something. I got to say it the way he said. I want you to think about this for a second. I was trying to get I needed some paperwork for a waiver form, so we can train without. I needed to know what the rules were, so you can start training on the program without being enrolled in school. Like, cool, this is what we did with Malachi, and so whatever, right? So we're talking, and he said, I said, this is interesting, because he wanted to make sure he had all the I's and T's dotted. And so we're talking, and I said, gosh, there's just no rest for the weary. And he said, we're just constantly critiquing, like, what can we do better? Where have we missed the mark? What do we need to tweak? What's worked? And I said, man, it's really hard to take. What do I always say? It's really hard to take self-inventory real time. That's one of the things that I admire, right? Especially if it's about the thinning of the herd. He looked dead at me and he said, and if you do it right, it should be a little bit painful, because when you look around and you know that you've got to make some changes and you haven't done things right, he said it's hard. Yeah, it's really reflectionary, and sometimes it'll hurt you, but you got to grow. And I was like, me, I wanted to stand up and cheer. I kept my cool because I didn't want to be some dork.
You'll be a fanboy.
Yeah, yeah, right. But it was just,
you don't want to just like dap him up, be like, hey, I love you.
Yes, but I did though.
Yeah.
Because that is 100% true.
I want you to try and remember something for me, okay? I think it was one of the first conversations we ever had on the air.
Me and you?
Yes.
Okay.
And we were talking about Frost because things were getting a little dicey. And do you remember what I said, why I didn't think it was going to change?
Yeah.
Because I didn't think
you dumbed it down because you said you didn't think he was actually going to be able to understand.
I didn't think he had the self-awareness
of where he needed to be better. Yeah.
Yes.
You said, you're like, oh, you can cheer for him I'll tell you exactly what he said. You said you can cheer for him all you want to, but I'm just telling you, I think he lacks the self-awareness to pull off what you're describing.
Yes.
And I was like,
and I think I called it the emotional maturity. He lacked the emotional maturity to be self-aware enough to pull off what you were describing, to pull off the change you were describing. That's a total 180 from, say, Fred Hoiberg, who we have seen in real time have the self-awareness and emotional maturity to flip around and be like, hey, this ain't working. Let's do something else. Let's fix this in real time. You know how hard that is for somebody who's been successful?
No, I know. Yeah.
For somebody who's been good at what they do to be like, this ain't working. Let's try something else.
Yeah.
That is why, despite the fact that the wins haven't come for Rule yet, that's the reason why I'm 100% in on Rule and I was 100% out on Frost. It wasn't about the wins and losses.
Yeah, and I don't know how many games they're going to win, but it's impossible is probably too strong of a word, and I hate absolutes.
Yeah.
He's almost impossible not to cheer for.
Yeah.
I truly believe that.
It is one of the things I care about the most in people, and especially in people that have positions of influence, whether it's in the community, whether it's in sports teams, whatever. It is accountability.
Did you ever see the list that he had for his coaches in the offseason? Or was that in it might have been in the clinic he posted.
I don't think so.
There's like 10 things that his staff has to do.
You've mentioned it to me,
right?
Before.
Dinners per week, meetings, going to class, like all these things that don't necessarily seem, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
And I remember one of our coaches. Oh, this is why it's on my brain. One of our coaches at school sent me a similar list. He said, do you think this is a little bit daunting with high school kids in the off season? And I looked at the list. I knew it looked familiar. And he's one of those guys that loves to he sends drills and new equipment. He's constantly, he stays on the gas.
Just like searching.
Which is why I think Coach DeMarinis wanted to hire him. But, and I said, well, I think this is doable and this is doable. I said, I don't know. I said, depends on how much free time you have if you're if they're not coaching or playing another sport. And it was a version of coach rules kind of guidelines, and he must have gotten it from the clinic that he did over at the Schooler building.
Yeah,
because he posted it, and it's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There was no one around yesterday except for like 3 people, and it was extremely quiet. And like, well, we have this group going, we have this group going. We had our 6:30, they're done. The 10:30s are getting ready to, or they're in the middle of it. I should probably, you know what I mean? It's like
there's always something.
100%.
Always something.
And it's like, all right, well, if idle time is the devil's playground, it's certainly in happening.
Not a lot of idle time to be found.
You know what I mean? So it's just like, and it's one of the things that bugged me yesterday about the what'd you call it? The game with St. John.
Oh, the letdown game.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, listen, he's a really good coach. So when you get to this stage of excellence and your preparation, that ownership, and I wasn't absolving the players of saying, you're saying so the players just can't. I said, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this game didn't sneak up on. It's not like the ink had just finished drying from reading the World Herald, and they're like, all of a sudden they're in Madison Square Garden. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I just wasn't buying that 100%. Now, if you would have told me Nebraska beat Minnesota in Minnesota last year in the opener and laid an egg in Boulder, and they didn't play well, you could have convinced me that, you know what, they didn't know how to handle it. They don't know how to handle it.
So I think
success. So it's situational.
That's fair.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's too old, too good of a team, and he's too good of a coach. I wasn't vibing with the letdown.
Coming up next, we will set up the show. We'll let you know what's coming up here on a Tuesday on Hurrdat Sports Radio. You're listening live on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, or on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We will be back with more coming up next. I'm Ravi, Lulla. That's DB. We're live on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities.
That's pretty good.
You good? We're good?
Yeah.
We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as well.
I got a question.
Yeah, let's do it.
I was driving around the state a lot yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
No, not actually, but
just bebopping around.
I felt like it. So I listened to a lot of stuff on radio.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, we should probably ask our listeners, Twitter poll, do you know when folks on radio have not watched a game, but they try to give you the illusion that they did?
Ooh, I do, yes, because I've done it before. I'm not proud of it, right?
Yeah.
But we've all been there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? And so I know what it sounds like.
Okay.
Right?
I'm just curious.
I can give away the keys to the kingdom right here. If somebody's talking about something very specific that is not game action related, they didn't watch that game. Like if they spend a lot of time talking about uniforms or a crowd or something like that, or implications, something not game related. And listen, there's a lot of times we talk about things outside of the actual game because we don't need to sit here and break down film for you.
Mm-hmm.
But if they are spending an inordinate amount of time, myself included, on something that isn't really related to the outcome or the implications of the game, there's a good chance that person did not watch the game.
So why wouldn't we just not talk about it? Because if it's a big enough game, you probably watched it. And if it's not, is it really radio?
Talk about
is it radio worthy?
I don't know. But I think sometimes, so there's a lot of people in our industry that have multiple obligations, right? So there is something they probably should have watched.
Oh, yeah. And
but
maybe they have a conflict.
Couldn't because they're calling a different game or they're working another job, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, if you're on a call for something, now, like if Nebraska football plays on a Thursday night, okay, and there's other Thursday night, like say there's Thursday night football, NFL that night, you're a crazy person, so you're going to stay up until the middle of the night and watch the NFL game after. But normal people go to bed.
At least key plays.
Yeah, normal people go to bed at some point.
Yeah.
Right? So we could talk about Nebraska all day. If I try and bring up that NFL game, probably
But I don't even know if I want to sleep. I do.
Yeah.
But like where you're all dreamy and all that. No.
Just breaking a couple naps a day, you're good to go.
I had a bad dream Friday night going into Saturday morning.
Yeah.
I didn't go back to bed.
Fair.
I did not go back to bed.
It's hard sometimes. You have a bad dream, like the heart rate gets elevated.
I thought it was weird. Like I would, full disclosure, I'll tell you off air, I probably wouldn't have minded the outcome of the dream.
Yeah.
But it was a little malicious. I was like, I felt icky. I was like, would I really cheer for somebody to get hurt?
No. Yeah.
If you have a bad dream like
But then
that,
I was like, that'd be fine.
if you have a bad dream like that, or if you have a good dream, whatever your dream is, if you talk to somebody about it, like psychologically,
where are you getting this
like
from,
like
first
with
of
your
all?
wife or something like that,
Uh-huh.
and you tell her the dream.
Are you talking to your wife?
No, but and I'm not talking to your wife about my dreams either. But if you do that, then you won't have the dream again. So if you
Who
don't,
told you that?
it's a psychological person. So if you don't want to have the dream again, talk to your wife about it.
I'm
And
ask
just
Dr. Stark.
just ask Dr. Stark.
Yeah, that's not true.
I don't know.
I mean, I've
Sounds plausible.
right, but I have talked to people about recurring dreams before, and they still come back.
Okay, breaking news. This segment got a little weird.
So let's set up the show real quick. Coming up at 8:00, we've got Jason Cole. He covers.
I don't know if I believe that.
I 100% don't believe it because I've done that and it's not true. Maybe I'm just I don't want to, maybe I'm an outlier here, which is not out of the question. But we've got Jason Cole coming up. He covers the NFL. He's written a bunch of NFL books. He's a Pro Football Hall of Fame selector as well. We'll talk to him coming up at 8. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening in the NFL right now. Free agency, that salary cap's going bonkers with that.
I mean, it's only going to go up.
Well, I know, but it went up. It jumped this year in a way that I don't think a lot of people were expecting.
Hey, can you imagine what 16% of next year's salary cap looks like for quarterback deals? What I asked you yesterday off air, can you imagine what Jordan Love is going to get paid?
Oh, he's going to get paid.
He's going to get paid. And people are going to think, I got Love. They can't. Listen, man, it's cost to do a business.
And none of the running backs are going to get paid.
How about these mid-level wide receivers that you're going to see making like $4 or $5 million a year?
Yeah. You're going to see like an upper middle class of wide receivers making pretty darn near quarterback money.
By the way, I'm a sport track tack guy.
Contract guy.
Yeah, so I look, Steelers. I'm like 13 mil, whatever in dead money. So I was looking at the Chiefs the other day after I dropped the Ridley thing. I don't know if you can pay Calvin Ridley. And what really got me on it was Mike Evans. You certainly can't pay Mike Evans.
That's fair.
Well, I don't now never say never, and that front office, I almost said yours, and you're not even a Chiefs fan. That front office is really good with numbers.
Yeah, they are.
But I mean, you maybe have to bring back Chris Jones on like a 1 year, but they can't go get. I don't think they can't get Evans or Ridley. They may have to get back into the draft and try to go hunting again for that second round wide receiver.
Which I'll just be totally honest here.
Unless somebody takes it, I mean,
after the Rams kind of did what they did with seemingly spending more money than was humanly possible, I don't fully understand.
Well, they didn't have it.
That's what I mean, but they still spent it.
Did you see their roster 2 years ago? It was arguably the worst in football.
Yes.
That's why they had to move Ramsey.
Right. But that's my point, though. Before that, they were just spending money like crazy.
Oh, yeah. And they paid the price.
They did, but like for a year, you can get away with it.
100%.
And so that's what I mean. I'm not saying the Chiefs would mortgage their future, but I don't understand the intricacies of how you get away with some of those things enough to say for sure that they can't sign Mike Evans.
They could sit Mahomes back down. At this point, Mahomes, gosh, I don't know him, so I hate, it's talk radio, so I'm just speculating, but I think Mahomes is almost to the point.
Like at the Brady point where he's just like, figure it out.
Yep.
Because he's chasing something other than getting paid at this point, right?
Yeah.
He's at the point in his career where he's like, hey, I'm chasing ghosts,
although
not checks.
I'm telling you, man, and I don't know if this is a hot take or not. He does not have to catch Brady to be the GOAT.
No, he doesn't.
I don't.
But
I
he
mean,
does
I
need
guess
more.
I'll take calls. What's
he
our
does
number?
need-
888-638-4876.
He does need more than 3 to be the GOAT. He doesn't have to get to 7, but he needs more than 3.
Okay, I'll entertain that, and I'm going to say just one more.
Fair. I mean, I don't know what the number is.
I mean, he could tie Montana, and I'd be like, yeah, he's better than Montana.
Oh, I think he's better than Montana right now. I mean, just watching him play the position, he's better than Montana.
That's what Now, listen, careful.
Listen, Patrick Mahomes can do things at the position that Joe Montana could not do.
Okay, but there's more than one way to skin a cat. Don't
Absolutely.
be that dismissive
I'm
about
not.
Joe Montana. He was incredible.
I love Joe Montana. I'm a 49ers fan. I'm not being dismissive of Joe Montana. I am being that laudatory of Patrick Mahomes. That's all I'm doing.
There you go again with the verbose vernacular.
Can I get through the rest of the lineup before
We're
going to do this thing again. We're going to keep this thing.
We don't have 2 guys. How hard is it?
Well, I mean,
spit it out, Steven.
Listen, when I'm talking to you, sometimes it's a little more difficult.
Damn.
We've got, as I mentioned, Jason Cole at 8. We've got Matt DeMarinis at 9. As we mentioned earlier, there's some Creighton topics to get to. Obviously, the Coach McDermott extension that's being worked on right now, not finalized. They wanted to make that clear, but seems like it's going to get done. And then there's some rumors out there about some guys that may or may not be coming back next year that want to talk to our guy Matty about.
Yeah,
because you mentioned this off air before we started the show that there's I think we were talking to Sam yesterday.
Yeah, McKeown.
When we were talking about Nebraska basketball players and guys that didn't have pro options likely coming back. Right. And you thought I was going to go a different direction with that.
I thought you were going to go to Creighton.
With Creighton guys that, not that they don't have pro options, but don't have clear NBA options, right? The guys on Creighton with clear NBA options are Baylor and Trey, and that's it right now. Ryan Carpenter
I would concur.
Ryan Carpenter might have had an opportunity last year. He was probably borderline, but it seems pretty clear now he's not a guy that's going to get drafted.
And he strikes me as the type of guy, he's looking at rosters, right?
Oh,
and I know he went through this last year.
Yeah.
Okay, where's the backup role? Who needs a backup center? This, that, and the way that the game has changed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. Life is pretty good in Omaha.
Life is pretty good in Omaha. Obviously, he's getting paid. Do you really want to go to Europe to make the same money? He's got
how many years married in? Is he one?
Is he married or just engaged?
I think he's.
I know Ashworth is married. I don't know if Carpenter's married yet or just engaged.
I think he got married.
Either way, there's some reasons to stay in Omaha too. I don't know. We'll get to that. We'll get to a little bit more. We'll wrap up hour number 1 coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as well. That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla. I have a feeling this might derail the show, but here we go.
I got a feeling.
Black Eyed Peas.
You said that yesterday?
That is correct.
That's
it?
Tonight's gonna be a good night.
I'm not gonna say how do I not know that. There's a lot of things I don't know.
That's all right. You don't know what you don't know.
Well, when real learning occurs.
That's right. Then you do know what you don't know, and then you know what you didn't know before. That's the progression.
I feel like he's the dude on Dodgeball. Remember that when he was like trying to proposition your boy to buy the gym? How do I know that you don't know and I don't know what you think I am? And that's what that reminded me of. And he had that real icky mustache.
Yeah, I don't know.
Did you never see bad?
I did see Dodgeball. I don't remember that point.
Yeah, they were in the hotel room after they got to the semifinals.
Oh yeah, okay.
Remember when the guy with the glasses went ham and he like annihilated the team single-handedly because he envisioned his wife with the dude she was sitting next to? Yeah. Did you forget that part?
I did, yeah. It's been a minute since I've seen Dodgeball.
And Marcel had come out of the bathroom. He said, "You have to excuse him. He's been having digestive issues." And your boy looked at him and he goes, "Do you mind closing the door?" Anyway.
On the YouTube comments, TK chimes in. We were talking about a little Brady and Mahomes for some reason, or Mahomes and Montana and Brady.
I was not trying to get into this discussion, people.
Here we are, though.
I better go to our comments page.
TK says the eras thing is, and not, eras not Taylor Swift, like different eras of football. People don't know this about you. I'm gonna reveal this.
You can't help yourself.
No, I'm gonna reveal this about DB live on the air this morning. Huge Taylor Swift fan.
That's a
lie. An enormous Taylor Swift fan. has paid an inordinate amount of money for Taylor Swift tickets, I think.
I would never.
And then he says the rule changes make offensive skill players' achievements less impressive to me. Mahomes doesn't have to worry about killing players over the middle like Brady or Montana did. I understand there are advantages, right?
Yeah. I would listen to that. I'm probably just not going to get in the weeds.
No, I am just going, and
I have to be honest, though.
Yeah.
Do you remember the conversation that we had about Jim Brown?
Yes.
What TK is saying is exactly why I was upset with whoever said, it might have been Sam, when he said Jim Brown is much harder to tackle than Barry Sanders.
He said people wanted to tackle
Barry more than they would Jim.
Yes.
And I was like, they ran 3 offensive run plays. No, they wouldn't.
Yeah.
Jim Brown would get hammered.
Yeah.
So I agree.
And physically he was less impressive compared to the era.
Yeah, but
like
listen,
if Jim Brown was playing in today's game,
yeah,
he would be less physically impressive than
11 games.
No one touches him.
He's making the same point I did.
Yeah.
If I only have to defend 3 plays,
much easier.
It's much easier.
Yeah, if you know what's coming, it's a lot easier.
Like how nobody could stop the Packers sweep, I have no idea. I don't.
It was revolutionary at the time.
But, at that time, they're playing pullers different and all.
Yeah,
I'm not going to get all nerdy.
It's a whole different thing.
They ran a play 38 times a game. How did crossbuck ever work?
I make this argument with basketball all the time. If you put like Jamal Crawford in the 60s, he'd be the most amazing thing they had ever seen.
I don't understand why you use Jamal Crawford. Friday.
Yeah.
Jamal Crawford was an analyst. I think it was All-Star.
Mm-hmm.
So last week. And I said to Micah, he may be one of the single greatest underrated offensive talents to ever play basketball.
Incredible.
And he looked at me like I was telling him that Jack Henry whipped the steam engine.
Incredible. John Henry.
Don't they call Jacks Johns?
Sometimes, and I don't understand why. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, whatever. The black guy with the big arms that swung the pickaxe.
Not Paul Bunyan, who I confused the two last week.
You called John Bunyan, but I think you meant John Runyon because you just saw his daughter hoop. So
I think I combined like 3 different people in that analogy. But
I think the only person that knows that Runyon's daughter is a hooper is Matt DeMarinis.
Probably. But the reason I use Jamal Crawford is because he's incredibly talented, but is just a dude in this era, right? Historically insignificant for the era, right? Not taking anything away from his talent. But if you drop him into like the 60s Celtics, people would think he's the greatest basketball player of all time.
Although he would never be able to dribble because the only guy they let palm the basketball was Bob Cousy.
Fair.
So like everybody else has got to keep their hand on top of the ball. And I don't know if he could dribble. My man, Tim, remember, hey, my favorite, Tim, my agronomist, herbologist, farmer sit in the small stores, Tim.
Don't put that crap on me.
The soap in the shower, Tim.
No, not Tim Miles. That's a different guy.
Yeah, he's in Colorado now, but so occasionally he'll DM me these images of people dribbling basketballs, and all he says is, and it's illegal as all get out, and nobody ever calls it, and he goes, I don't understand basketball.
Yeah. Well, it used to be you had to keep your hand on top of the ball. And then it's just like, hey, you can't have it all the way under the ball now. You can like pause on the side. You can do whatever you want. And there was a time, not to throw AI under the bus here a little bit, because I know you love him.
I do.
But there was some.
All of a sudden, he's everywhere. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how that happened because he kind of disappeared for a while.
Yeah.
Now he's back.
He's aged, but no, not physically. He looks a mess.
Yeah, he looks like he's had a hard time.
But historically, his prowess is aged better, if that's even possible.
Better than what?
Better than even as good as he was when he played.
Better than it probably was.
Yep. And he was fantastic.
He was. I think people would have a hard time with him in this era in terms of his efficiencies or inefficiencies, as it were.
Ravi Lulla here for killing.
I'm not killing AI. I'm just
with data.
I'm just saying.
Okay.
He was not.
I want to get back to the Montana thing.
Okay,
so
let's
I
go.
can land this plane.
Let's land the plane.
But you see, that's the problem with you analytics people.
won an okay amount in Philly. Those weren't a lot of very good teams that
because I know some guys that you'd think are incredibly efficient in terms of generating points and ISO ball, and they didn't win diddly squat. Especially with points per possession.
And I have been hating on Luka Doncic because I don't enjoy the way he plays basketball.
If he won more, you wouldn't, though. He don't win enough. That stuff doesn't work in the playoffs.
No, because it's the same thing with James Harden. James Harden was winning 60 games.
So could I be in a I sold myself I wasn't going here. So if AI was getting buckets and he was inefficient and they were getting dubs in the playoffs, are you cool with that?
I personally am cool with that.
Okay.
I think there would be a large section of the NBA watching public that would crush him for his inefficiency.
Dubs.
That's all I said.
I've seen a lot of efficient guys not get enough wins.
Listen, I'm not here standing for.
Yeah, that's not the business you want to stand on.
For
you rather blaspheme Joe Montana because Everson Walls and those guys got the hold in the secondary. Let's not make it seem like Jerry Rice was getting chucked. Okay,
yeah,
like that wasn't a thing either.
I am not blaspheming.
John Taylor flourished.
I am not blaspheming Joe Montana.
John Taylor isn't even Gabe Davis in 2024. So let's knock that off. Okay,
I was more of a Vernon Davis guy myself. Talk about a combine hero. That was my dude.
Can't wait to talk combine.
That dude ran like a 4.37 at about 260 pounds. Vernon Davis was always disappointed with his actual production. What are you pointing at? They can't see that on the radio.
LeBron whining about his son. That's why. It's things like that. Ooh, why do you hate LeBron? It's things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even. So to be full disclosure,
to change the subject for the 19th time in
that's on
3
you.
minutes.
That's on you.
Why are you putting that on? Don't put that crap on me.
All right, Timmy.
All right, Dirk.
Don't put that crap on me.
Bronny James is projected as a second-round pick in the NBA draft, which I think is aggressively high. Compare for like what he is.
If he got drafted, it'd be a favor.
Yeah, like if he's not LeBron James' son, he's not in the mock draft.
I'll show you the guy on TikTok that I follow that tracks every game of his. I think he's doing it just to be funny. It's not good.
No, it's not.
It's not good.
And like I'm happy that he overcame his heart malady to be able to play college basketball. That's terrific. Doesn't make him an NBA player.
100%.
I don't know how we got here.
Because you were getting ready to try to make TK's point about.
I wasn't trying to make his point. I was
between Mahomes, Brady, and
up his point. I was not crushing Montana. I don't know how that happened. I don't know. You just threw that on me, right? I'm a Montana guy. I like Joe Montana. I'm not. Come on, man. You're trying to get me.
It was your facial expression.
You're trying to get me in trouble.
No,
again.
It was your facial expression when you said when I was talking about. Excuse me. When I was talking about the 4 rings, and you were like, Montana, and I go, what? Hold on now. Like
all I said was I thought Mahomes was already better than Montana. That's all I said.
Yeah, that's fine. But I don't think he needs an inordinate amount of rings
to catch Brady
to be in the GOAT conversation.
What does he need then?
I don't know, maybe one more.
Well, if he doesn't need more rings, what else does he need? Just to continue to play at this level for longer?
So this is usually my general rule of thumb. Okay. You can feel free to steal this if you will.
Okay.
When people get into discussions of who's better, the tiebreaker, which is way down the list, should be championships won. Mm-hmm. So
what's the rest of the list that Patrick Mahomes needs to continue to complete in order to catch Brady?
Well, sometimes it's IQ, it's arm talent, it's playing style, it's what do your eyes tell you? Like there's a lot.
So mostly visually what you're watching more than anything.
Or whether you take that guy head to head. Or whether you could have the same players, who would you take that would win? There's stuff like that.
Okay, that's fair.
Championships won is way down on my list.
Well, coming up next, we can get some more NFL conversations going with our guy Jason Cole here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're also live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as we effort Jason Cole. He is a Pro Football Hall of Fame selector as well as an author of several books. I want to tell you about our friends at the Omaha Supernovas. They've got a match coming up on Thursday against the Atlanta Vibe. That's on the road, but you can Follow along on supernovas.com. You can listen live, look at live stats, as well as find out where to watch that as well. But they come back home March 14th against those same Atlanta Vibe at the CHI Health Center, 7 p.m. March 14th. Get your tickets at supernovas.com. You can also shop for some merchandise. You can check out the schedule, the roster, any other news and information you need from them as well. That is supernovas.com. So you were kind of crushing me in the comments a little bit here.
That's not true.
A little bit.
No,
a little bit.
I was agreeing with Matt.
So Matt said that people who care about basketball.
No, you have to read.
I'll read it in its entirety.
Yeah,
okay?
because
let's read it in its
I
entirety.
could see this being your delivery.
To be clear.
Yep.
Your
favorite line.
No, I usually say
to be clear or
let's
be clear.
I usually say to be honest or let's be clear.
Yeah.
No one caps.
As if the supposition before is that it was ambiguous or
yeah. Well,
we were being a little murky.
Usually when we get into an argument, it's because you're not being clear. You're being a little ambiguous on me. He says no one that pays attention to the NBA is talking about efficiency. If efficiency was an actual draw, it wouldn't be unwatchable. First of all, I think efficiency actually is more unwatchable if you go too far into it, because we'll get to it later. We've got our guys
saved by the bell. Although I'm going to ride with Matty here.
You know what? Listen, you're more than welcome to be wrong.
Well, you come back to it. Hold that.
That's fine. Coming in on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline is Jason Cole. He is an author, covers the NFL, and is a
not yet.
Okay. Why is it up on the screen then?
I'm waiting for him.
That's not helpful, Shane. Like, can we just make a new rule? Listen, I haven't verbalized this before, so this is on me. Can we make a new rule that we don't put the name on the screen until it's ready? That would help me out a lot. That's all I'm saying.
I only have one arm. I can't put him on the screen and dial him up and do everything. I only have like two arms there.
Okay.
Oh.
So we don't have Jason. Is that?
But listen. Stop. Shane, would you like to talk to us?
We good? We have him?
Yeah.
All right. Jason Cole's on the line on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline. Jason, how are you this morning?
I am fantastic. What's going on?
Jason, it's funny, but we ran this all the way to your segment. Maybe you can help us because we got all these TVs around us, and I'm looking at the Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson versus those guys can't beat Mahomes, and it's just funny because a couple of minutes earlier on the segment we were talking about the salary cap and what the Chiefs would do in order to build around, and would Mahomes make some concessions, being secure in his place in history. At what point do you look at championships or head-to-head when it comes to actual quarterback play? Does that matter to you?
Yeah, it matters.
Is it down on the list? Is it up on the list? Is it?
It's sort of. I'm not sure that I've never made a list, so I don't know where it stands. But it does sort of. I mean, it's sort of like Magic versus Bird, right? Like who's better, right? Who, Brady versus Manning, who's better? Well, who won more often? Now, I understand football is, ultimate team sport. We can put that cliche out there, which is true. And so there's a lot of factors that go into it. And those guys don't actually play against each other like, say, Bird and Magic actually, faced off and had to guard each other at certain times. Not a lot, but but they did. But, head-to-head matter. I mean, look, winning matters. That's why I hear people say when they want to talk to me about my Hall of Fame vote, and they say, I'll say, well, this guy won this many Super Bowls and this guy didn't win any. They say, well, it's a team sport. Guys don't control that. That's true, but the point of the exercise is to win. Like the point of playing is to win championships. So if you do that, you should get credit. If you don't, I'm not necessarily taking stuff away from you, but it's a differentiating factor. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So for you, statistically, and maybe this is too close of a comparison, so championships would be easy. But like, if you had to take a guy, like, would you take Eli Manning over, like, let's say Phillip Rivers, for instance? Like that kind of discussion winning?
Yeah, well, if you're ranking them, like Phillip Rivers had a much better statistical career. There's no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
And Phillip Rivers played a much more consistent career. But at the end of the day, Eli Manning accomplished he lived up to the bargain, if that makes sense.
Yeah, to the bargain. I may use that.
Yeah, the intent was, we're bringing you in because we want to win Super Bowls, and he did that. Phillip Rivers unfortunately didn't. And the one time they got really close, Marty Schottenheimer kind of blew the game, and and Marlon McCree blew the game, and they probably would have rolled to a title if not for a couple of plays. But that's how this thing works. That's Brock Purdy would be holding the Super Bowl trophy if not for a couple of plays that San Francisco didn't come up with. Now, would I say that I would take Brock Purdy over Patrick Mahomes? Of course not. Like does not be absurd. But when you're talking about guys who had pretty equal careers, yeah, I'm probably going to take the guy who ended up winning the championships, even though I know the other guy was a little bit more consistent. If that makes sense. Absolutely. If I'm ranking their careers, but that's a differentiator.
We're talking with Jason Cole. He's an author and a Pro Football Hall of Fame selector. Jason, do you apply the championship logic at all to positions outside of the quarterback spot? Because that seems to be where we focus a ton on that. But obviously, throughout different parts of the history of the game, other positions became more or less important. How much do you weigh in championships on? I mean, I'll use a guy that we talk about a lot around here because he played at Nebraska that people think should be a Hall of Famer, like a Roger Craig, right? How much do championships matter for his case as opposed to a quarterback?
Oh, I like that. Okay.
It's a really good question. And you would say it puts him in the discussion. I watched Roger's career, and I thought, this is a really great player. Is it Hall of Fame worthy? I'm always left saying not quite. And I don't think it was quite long enough, or in terms of greatness, and I don't think it was quite spectacular enough. And so the winning is really important and keeps him in the discussion, but it comes up just a little short in my view. Like there's a lot of running backs in there who, Fred Taylor's having a hell of a time getting in. Probably won't make it. Who is the guy with the Rams?
Steven Jackson.
Steven Jackson, right? Like that's a terrific player. Probably never make it. Ricky Waters in that discussion, who put up some amazing numbers. Not quite there. Jamal Charles, who, if you talk to people who saw them both play and coached both of them, they would say Jamal Charles was a better player than Ricky Waters, but not quite there.
Priest Holmes had a 3-4 year run that was unbelievable. Right?
Yeah, he has a 3 or 4 year run that is Terrell Davis plus a little bit, in some ways, right? Especially as a receiver, it's not quite good enough to me.
Jason, I love the Magic Bird reference, and not just because Magic is my favorite player of all time, but just your range in terms of sports. When you look at, because this happens a ton with eras and comparing eras and giving allowances where they could clutch and grab, or they didn't work guys in the slot, or you couldn't hit guys. When you look at, like, just in your sports Rolodex, which sport for you, when you do comparisons, is eras the easiest to transcend? Is it baseball? Is it basketball? Is it football? Is it hockey? I mean, can you see Orr and and Gretzky and one another. Like, what sport do you think?
I'm not a hockey guy, so that's bad. And don't do that. Basketball is the easiest one because the rule changes are not as pronounced, and the effect of the equipment is not as pronounced. Like in baseball, the equipment, does the baseball have a Super Bowl in the middle of it or not? So you look at Sammy Sosa and you go, yeah, if I put Hank Aaron with that baseball, it's 900 home runs, right?
Ballpark dimensions. I get it.
Even the bats. Even the bats.
Yeah, right. Height of the mound, which is the Bob Gibson thing. There's just a lot in baseball. The shape of the strike zone and how that changed over the years. All of these things in baseball affect the game a lot. In football, the rules affect a lot, right? Like you get this mammoth change in the game in the mid 1970s, essentially because Gil Brandt one day wakes up. I think it's the beginning of the 1976 or 1977 season, and I think the opening week of one of those two seasons, I've looked it up and I just can't remember which one it was, but I think it featured like 7 shutouts in the opening week, and like 3 other games where one of the teams scored less than 10 points. And Gil Brandt just looked up. He threw his newspaper down. It wasn't Gil Brandt. I'm sorry, it's Tex Schramm.
Yeah,
he was in front of Gil Brandt. Tex Schramm is there and goes, "Nobody's going to watch this crap," because nobody could score, right? So he's like, "We got to change the rules." So they changed the rules, and we get Joe Montana and the 49ers, dominating in the 80s, and then the passing game just takes off because the NFL realizes how much fans love the passing game, right? So we have a completely and totally different era from what Unitas was playing in, or what Namath was playing in, or what Fran Tarkenton was playing in. So basketball is the closest. Now the 3-pointer has obviously changed the game a lot, in the modern use of it. And sometimes that's for the worse, and sometimes it's for the better. I mean, when you have teams that actually know how to use the 3-pointer, it's fun to watch. When you have teams that are just chucking up shots because they don't know how to play, that's a little frustrating. But we're back to scoring, and that's fun. We're back to what sort of the Celtic Lakers, with the 76ers sprinkled in there. We're back to that era where scoring is important, and we're out of that era, the sort of Chuck Daly, Detroit, Chicago era where we're playing games in the 80s and 90s every night, which was just dreadful.
Jason, we're talking about eras, and I brought up, obviously a running back earlier. We've obviously entered into an era where the running back position is not valued in a real way at all for the most part. Do you think that has, obviously the emergence of the passing game is part of that, as you were talking about, but do you think it's swung too far are they actually undervalued now compared to where they should be, considering some of the guys we're going to see on the free agent market this year? It's kind of astounding to me that there's that level of talent, and maybe none of them are going to get paid.
It's not really a function of the game itself. It's a function of the salary cap and the way the rules work. And that is that, that it's sort of like when you were talking about Priest Holmes, he had 3 or 4 great years early on. Terrell Davis, kind of same thing. Well, for running backs, that happens in your first 5 years. And then after your first 5 years, you're done. It's sort of like the old rule about 800 games for a catcher. Catchers are really great for the first 800 games that they catch. And then all of a sudden they fall off a cliff generally because their bodies are just beaten to crap, right? Running backs are the same things. Well, if you don't have free agency until maybe after the 3rd season, more likely after the 4th, and sometimes after the 5th, if you franchise a guy, as what happened with Saquon Barkley, when's that dude ever going to get paid?
Yeah.
So I'm going to draft a running back in the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd round. I'm going to play him out for those, 5 years that I have, 4 or 5 years that I have control. And it's okay, nice knowing you, and you're out. And you'll be lucky to get paid. And everybody knows that if I'm paying you now, it's diminishing returns on that investment because it's more likely that you're going to be devalued in, the upcoming years because there are very few Curtis Martins in this world. There are very few guys who play 10 years at that kind of high level consistently. I mean, go back and look at most of the great running backs in history. They have 2 or 3 great years, maybe 4, even if they play for 10 or 12 years. And then they're just like slogging around making, 600, 800 yards.
God, that's a great, you're getting better by the minute with this interview. That's why I like guys like Peterson and Adrian Peterson and Edgerrin James and even Clinton. Like some of these guys were good for a long time. And I think it's underappreciated because of what the position, the toll that it takes. I mean, Derrick Henry's he's bucking the trend. Now, it just so happens he's one of those UFAs.
Well, he's different. I mean, he's built different. He's the perfect running back for this game because when you're playing all these, nickel and dime defenses, and you can play with Derrick Henry, you can play 3 and 4 wides because he's his own offensive line. I mean, in reality, right? Like, and all of a sudden, like, okay, you're going to line up with 6 or 7 DBs on here, and you're going to run up in the single back with Derrick Henry. Like, if he gets on the outside, and none of those dudes want to have anything to do with that, right? Like, it's just like, no, man. Like, I'm just like, let me grab an arm and hold on for dear life and get me help. Like that's what happens with those guys because he just powers through those guys. And I'm not saying that that's how he made all his yards and their cheap yards or anything because he saw plenty of 7 and 8 man fronts too and powered through those guys. But you can change up the game and force the other team into a situation where they've got a lot of guys on the field who want nothing to do with having to tackle that guy. And that's just a reality. So he's a battering ram. Whereas, with Christian McCaffrey, it's a little bit different. Now McCaffrey does it because he's such a great route runner. He forces you to play the edges all the time. Which opens up a lot of stuff between the tackles for him as well. But you've got to align your defense differently. But Derrick Henry's, I love watching him play because it's a brute force thing, and it's so wonderful.
Jason, who do you think is going to affect the draft more as a free agent, and this isn't the case for Fields, but he's apparently going to be out in Chicago. Who do you think impacts the draft more from the quarterback spot, Kirk Cousins or Justin Fields?
Kirk Cousins, because he's a plug and play starter, and you can put Kirk Cousins in and say, okay, he makes us a playoff contender. Whereas Justin Fields, you're saying, okay, I've still got to see development.
Mm-hmm.
And it wouldn't, like if I took Justin Fields, I probably wouldn't draft a quarterback, but it wouldn't stop me from taking a quarterback. Does that make sense? Whereas if I take Kirk Cousins, I'm not taking a quarterback in the draft. Maybe in the 7th round, if there's some kid that I say, okay, I can develop into a backup. But Kirk Cousins, you're going to make a $40-45 million a year investment in him. He's going to be expensive. And so if that's what happens with Kirk Cousins, that takes that team off the board.
Who's closer to being a quarterback away? This is coming from a diehard Steelers fan. The Steelers or Atlanta?
Oh, it's the Steelers by far. I mean, they have
even given the division.
Yeah, even in the division, they have a championship defense. I mean, Atlanta doesn't have. Okay, if you want to win the division, sure, give them a quarterback. Atlanta could maybe win the division, win 10 games. Are they really a threat to win a Super Bowl? No, not yet. If you give Pittsburgh a real quarterback, they're a threat to win a Super Bowl because of the caliber of that defense. So that's a real contender. Yeah, do they have to go through Baltimore? Do they have to go through Cleveland? Do they have to go through Cincinnati? Sure, but they're an actual contender. They could go into Kansas City with that defense and create havoc. And if you have a quarterback who can get to 27 or 30 points. Now I say that this year I would have said if you can get to 23 or 24, you could win. You could beat Kansas City. I think that by next year, like they're going to have 2 new receivers on the outside. One's probably going to be somebody like Mike Evans, and then they'll probably draft a guy in the first or second round. And this is a deep year for wide receivers in the draft. And they're not going to let what happened this year happen again. They're not going to make that mistake twice.
Jason, just a couple minutes left here with you. You know, we're jumping around all over the place, but you know, a couple of names that you brought up that got me thinking were Brock Purdy, and then you mentioned Cincinnati in the division last year. They each have a couple quarterbacks that made it to the Super Bowl and lost. It was brought to my attention last week that the trends for those guys that lose in their first Super Bowl appearance coming back and winning are not good. I think Bob Greasy and then a guy that you wrote the book on, literally John Elway, are the only ones to have done it. Do you have a theory as to why that's the case, or is it kind of a weird abnormality?
Weird abnormality, just because I think getting us there is so hard.
Okay. So you wouldn't bet against like a Joe Burrow or Brock Purdy if you like the roster to go and win?
No, it's like, I mean, the 49ers, you know, the issue for Brock Purdy and the 49ers is all of the guys are aging out at the same time. Like Debo and Kittle and Juszczyk, and I know it's a free agent. I kind of expect they'll find a way to keep him. And McCaffrey, like those guys could all be done at the same time. Like they haven't staggered those guys, and they're going to have to figure out a way to replace them. Excuse me. The other thing is that to play in a Shanahan offense, you need to have guys who are really, really experienced and smart. So just replacing a guy is not as easy as at other places. So that hurts Purdy a lot because you need to have guys around him. That's for Joe Burrow. Like, you just got to stay on the field. And I mean, that's a guy who's a great player, and he's going to be a great passer, but they got to keep him on the field. It's as simple as that.
Only got about 30 seconds here, Jason, but who do you think is the safest pick in the draft?
Oh, look, I think Caleb Williams is the safest pick in the draft.
As a quarterback, that's gutsy. I like it.
I would go, but let's go this. I think he's going to be a really fun, great player. But even if you're talking about purely safe, I mean, it's a tie between Notre Dame and Harrison from Ohio State. Those guys are, Harrison's going to be a fantastic player. But I always say you bet on quarterback, because quarterbacks can make you get great for 10 or 12 years.
Heck of a segment.
That's Jason Cole. Great stuff. We appreciate your time as always. We'll catch up again soon.
Anytime, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Jason.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Really good stuff there from Jason Cole in the last segment. Appreciate him allowing us to go all over the map with
you got to take advantage of, because a lot of it is going to set the stage for what some of the discussions, like it just I'm looking at all these talking heads, and I think unfortunately you probably said it best, but I'm like, gosh, Josh Allen versus Lamar and what they are against Mahomes. And it was on the heels of us talking about Mahomes and Brady in Montana.
Yeah.
And you said, I get this. It just feels like the quarterback head-to-head thing is overrated.
They don't mean that much to me. They really don't. Because the guy that no one in their right mind will argue is the greatest quarterback of all time right now, at least Tom Brady, has lost Super Bowls to Nick Foles and Eli Manning. Okay, so how much can that head-to-head really matter? That's the question. Obviously, you're talking, okay, late stage. I mean, 07 is not even late stage Brady. That's peak Brady. 11, peak Brady. right? You can even make the
It's in
argument
the middle of his career.
Yeah, you can even make the argument that Foles, what was that, 19? That was still pretty much peak Brady. He was not dropping off much at that point still. So you can't really even make the argument. It's like, well, it's like late stage Brady versus early stage whatever. No.
The latest of the late stage, Brady won a Super Bowl.
Yes. Well, second to latest. He played one more year after that, right?
No, I know. The latest, we're talking stages, right? Not year.
Sure.
So if we're talking stages,
yes, the latest stage
of
his,
the
yes,
yeah, the
correct.
latest stage, he won a Super Bowl.
He won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Yes, you're absolutely right. So I don't put a ton of stock in the head-to-heads. You know, I know it's people will, and I've said this, you know, Mahomes has only lost playoff games to Brady and to Burrow. He's lost once to Burrow, twice to Brady. And I just don't know how much that matters.
If they weren't going for that record that year, Brady wins that Super Bowl. If they were something and won or whatever, then Brady wins that Super Bowl. I don't think the head-to-head. I think the head-to-head was against the Dolphins that year from '72, just trying to get that record. That's where the head-to-head in that one came from.
I think the head-to-head was with that pass rush of the Giants that they couldn't do anything with.
Yeah,
that was the head-to-head.
Osi Manor and
Shanahan
and Tuck.
Solid, but
that was the problem. Right, it had nothing to do with Eli Manning. Eli Manning made enough plays.
I mean, just think about that for a second. Those guys were some monsters.
They were. That was
they could afford to move Strand to like a 3-tech.
Wasn't Pierre Paul on that team too, or was that 11?
Might have been 11.
Okay, because he was on one of those two.
Yeah,
I don't remember how many fingers he had in that particular Super Bowl, but he.
Wow, Ravi here for fireworks.
I am not a big fireworks guy. I think it's really dumb.
Jeez,
I think it's really dumb to set off your own fireworks.
So I mean, I like. So he said a couple of things I thought were interesting. Number one,
yeah,
he validated Kirk Cousins, which is all I wanted to hear somebody that actually knows sports do. Right?
Yeah.
Like Kirk Cousins is
really good.
I used to argue about this with, and I don't think Schaaf was. He's a fan of the team, so sometimes I think he could be.
Yeah, there's a frustration
of
level
of Cousins,
yeah.
But I think the last couple of years, I think Schaefer's become pretty appreciative of Kirk Cousins. Like he's never been one of those guys that like I'm not sure how BC feels about Cousins, like to speak for, but Cousins is way better than media gives him credit for.
Cousins is one of those quintessential guys that is very good at what he does,
and it makes me mad that we perpetuate the primetime narrative,
but not good enough to elevate your team.
I don't know, man. The dude's had some trashy defenses. He's
no, that's fair.
Too, but
no,
I'm going to get started on Kirk Cousins hour, but
no,
he's just better than and every team in the league that outside the top 8 would take Cousins. Dallas would take Kirk Cousins.
I think that Kirk Cousins is on the
out of breath. Brian, don't call me. He might though.
I think Kirk Cousins is on the top end of kind of that second tier of quarterbacks.
It's fine
because the first tier of quarterbacks are the guys that can elevate your team to something that they probably shouldn't be.
Well, there's only a couple of those. So you can't even put like Herbert and Lawrence in that category,
I agree. No,
right?
I agree. I think you're talking about Mahomes. I do think you're talking about a healthy Burrow there.
Oh, 100%.
That might be it.
How about them?
Allen Allen in that category?
Yeah. Allen 100% elevates the Buffalo.
So that's 3. Is there anybody else in the league in that category that elevates their ceiling in a real way? Because those are the only 3 I can think of off the top of my head.
That might be it.
So I'm willing to put I'm willing to put Cousins as close to the top of that next category as you want to. I'm not going to argue against it. I probably don't.
You know a guy I like that's pretty maligned.
Who
is Stafford?
Oh, I like Stafford.
I feel like
is he maligned or is he just forgotten? Like I think he's kind of overlooked.
He was severely maligned until he won.
Well, in Detroit,
Super Bowl.
Which I think if you look at the history of Detroit, the fact that he made 2 playoff
and some of that he brought with him from Georgia,
sure.
Right? I think.
Because they were preseason number 1 year. They were disappointing. They had him and no Sean Moreno and was it Mohamed Massaquoi?
Yeah, Massaquoi, yeah.
He was a nice player.
Moreno.
AJ Green, I think, was on one of those teams. Like they had they had some nice skill position players. They were
I probably like Stafford more than most.
But do you put him in that? You don't put him in that top category.
No, but I do think he elevates. What are the Rams do? And I love Kyron Williams. So hear my heart. Like I just vouch for him as a running back. But I
Stafford's an interesting question.
I think he's pretty good.
He is pretty good.
I mean, Puka Nacua
Was it what, 5th rounder out of BYU?
and it's not like he was killing people with his physical attributes outside of his physicality. I was surprised that JC thought
Cooper Kupp. What do we know about Cooper Kupp outside of Matt Stafford?
nothing.
Right?
But here's the thing. Were you surprised that he kind of slid in? Now I lost my train of thought.
Did he bring somebody up you weren't expecting?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I was just talking about Stafford.
Puka Nacua, elevating. Was I surprised that he brought up or he snuck in?
OMG.
Who am I missing?
I'm not sure where you were going.
Oh my Lord, have mercy.
I'll give you a minute there.
Whatever the hell it is.
Matthew Stafford's a really, really interesting case because I don't know. At first blush, I kind of push back on him being in that elevates their team category.
Dude, he's a Hall of Famer.
Oh, he's for sure a Hall of Famer. But when you really think about it, I don't know that I don't have a really good reason. I just don't think of him as that guy. But the body of work is pretty close to what we're talking. I mean, I think the body of work's better than Burrow's.
I think he's 100% overlooked.
The body of work is better than Josh Allen's at this point, right?
The production. You talking about the results? Yeah.
Both.
Yeah.
I mean, the production and the results are better than Josh Allen. The production and the results are better than Joe Burrow.
Although Josh Allen's on a ridiculous pace.
He is. Yeah, long term he might.
And I don't know how long Allen can do what he's doing.
Yeah, we saw this with Cam Newton, right?
He's much better than Cam, though.
No, I understand, but I mean, in terms of he fell.
No, let me stop, DB.
How much better than Cam?
I'm not gonna say much better. I take that back. I made a mistake. Because the accuracy, yeah, but there are some similarities because I think you do have to take a look at Josh Allen without Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen with Stephon Diggs, Dable, no Dable.
Mm-hmm.
I still think you make a few little caveats for Josh Allen, but I don't have any problem saying Allen is one of those guys that elevates. He's unbelievable.
Yes, he definitely elevates his team. It looks a little different than some of those other guys, right? What about Lamar? Where do we put Lamar? Elevates his team or doesn't? That one's tough, I think.
Lamar elevates his team
because they're not as good without him, but he hasn't won very much.
Not in nut cutting time.
Like, that's tough. That's what makes Lamar really tough, right?
Yeah, but like it's hard to get over the top.
Mm-hmm. It is. No, it's really hard. That's what Jason was talking about.
Especially in the AFC right now, when you get into
because you have to deal with Mahomes
or Allen
or Burrow.
There's
a lot of guys there that you probably don't want to see on your side of the bracket.
Do I give the interesting example before I get into these quarterbacks?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you know what I was going to say about JC? That he just kind of slid in at the end that Caleb Williams was
the safest.
Yeah. Like just
yeah.
I was like, well, that's interesting.
I think he might have the safest talent. I don't know where his head's at.
Yeah, this draft. I mean, I want to get back into it.
I'm gonna have to look at. I'm looking at Cam Newton, Josh Allen stats right now because I think it might be closer than we think.
That's why I took it back.
Yeah, I think it might be closer.
I had to take it back, and I didn't want to. I don't know. No disrespect to Cam.
Coming up next, we'll wrap up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. I know it seems like sometimes when we're doing this show that we get kind of off the road and into the ditch a little bit here, but when you're driving, it's hands on the wheel, eyes in focus, straight ahead. As the driver, you have one job, and that is to drive. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. We can afford to get off the rails a little bit here because the stakes are a little bit lower as we wrap up hour number 2. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're live on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, as well as Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube.
Do you know? So I was just talking to my old head coach, and he's funny because he's I always talk about Coach Frank, and I'm like, he's super cerebral.
Yeah,
probably a hard guy to play cards with, this, that, and the other. One of the reasons I think he likes that interview, and I said one of the cool things about Jason is if you stretch him, he doesn't mind.
Yeah.
But if you ask
bad questions,
if you don't, because I remember early on, I was telling Shane this in like 13 or 14. Like it was kind of tough. It was like, ooh, you better be on your A game.
Yeah, if you don't ask a good question,
because he's not going to. But he'll like go there. And one of the interesting things is I didn't want to dominate it with a Steeler segment, so I had to figure out how can I get the most out of him. So it's the quarterback comparison, Atlanta to Pittsburgh, and then he took it places that prompted another question. Because what did we originally want to talk to Jason Cole about?
I think the free agency market
in the draft.
Yeah, in the draft. Yeah,
combine.
It's very little about what we talking about.
I briefly brought up running backs at the end.
The Caleb Williams thing surprised me.
Yeah, he snuck it in there on you.
The Kirk Cousins thing surprised me.
Although I think he's right on Kirk Cousins. I don't know if I agree on Caleb Williams.
Plug and play, $45 million.
Yeah, that's a big number, but that's the cost of doing business, right?
I didn't get to ask him about the streaming because Amazon's going to come with some more money for the NFL next year.
Because what's the what's the salary cap number? 16% is the quarterback max?
Usually, yeah.
So it's 255 next year.
Yeah, so let's just say it's
times 0.0. Nope, I got to do that right. 255 times 0.1.
Come on.
I'm bad at this real time. 255 times 0.16. Yeah, 41 million basically is your quarterback number.
So just imagine 10%. So that means next year. Hey, Jordan Love's going to be a $44 million quarterback.
And I think that makes a lot of people uncomfortable.
No.
You don't think so?
No. Not in Green Bay.
No, I mean.
Oh, that's where the numbers are going?
I think
there's only a few positions that have been thrown off. Like
from an outside perspective, I think you look at it like at first, gut reaction, you say Jordan Love, $44 million, yes or no. My instant reaction is to say no, because we don't have a long enough track record with him to feel good about that number. Frankly, that's probably the direction that Brock Purdy's headed as well. And I would say no on Brock Purdy too. But that's probably the way
Did he
it's
scare you with the aging out at the same time?
He didn't scare me because I knew it. And I think they've probably got a year or two left, I think.
There's another Samuel that's an unrestricted free agent, and his name is Curtis.
Yeah.
How would you love or hate to be the Commanders with all that inordinate cap space and maybe no one wants to come to your franchise?
I think it helps a lot that Dan Snyder's not the owner anymore. Because I think there had been such a
stink.
Stench on the entire organization because of Snyder. And not even the stuff that actually got him ousted, but just, hey, he's a bad owner, he's not good at this, whatever.
Shane, plug your ears, because he said Commanders, not Raiders. Sorry about that.
Sorry about that.
The Raiders are Raiders.
He's still hoping they trade up to get a quarterback, aren't you?
Well, they've done that like a lot.
He's a big Jimmy G guy, I think.
No. And apparently Antonio Pierce isn't either.
That's fair.
You got to come sit next to me, bud. They didn't even give that coaching change Jimmy G out. Like, they didn't even give that a second thought.
No, they really didn't. But I think it helps that Snyder's not there anymore. I think there's going to have to be
they got a ton of money.
There's going to have to be a prove it in terms of, hey, things are actually different organizationally, but it at least gives you a chance. Whereas with Snyder, you didn't have a chance. There was no prayer.
I'm cringing at, like if the Steelers have to go get a quarterback, I much prefer Fields than Russell Wilson.
Oh God, yes, yeah.
And plus, you get him for like another $225 on the rookie deal.
Plus, here's the thing: we know I have a pretty good idea what Russell Wilson is right now. I have a pretty good idea 100%. What he's going to be the rest of his career.
But that's also going to work against Justin Fields.
It is.
Because you don't know what you're getting.
100%. But part of the problem, I'm not just talking about production in terms of what you're getting.
Oh, you're
also getting the other stuff
the brand
with Russell Wilson as well. And I don't know that you're interested in that if you're the Steelers, right? The Steelers are kind of their own brand. There's only so many places you can go. We talked about this with Dion a lot last year in Colorado.
Yeah.
Right? They're different personalities, but they are very strong personalities that kind of dominate what's happening there. That's why it didn't work out with Sean Payton, because Sean Payton wants to be that personality, not Russell Wilson, right? That's why it worked with Drew Brees. Because
you mean Mike McCarthy?
No,
you said Sean Payton.
Sean Payton.
I thought you meant Mike McCarthy.
No, I was talking about Denver, Sean Payton.
They're the same person.
Well, yes, they are. But I think Sean Payton.
You'd never know that, though.
I think
one seems like they'd be much easier to work with.
McCarthy.
Yes.
Sean Payton is Mike McCarthy, but with an outsized ego.
It's
right. But that's why him and Russell Wilson aren't. That's one of the reasons him and Russell Wilson aren't a good fit, because Russell Wilson wants to be kind of face of the franchise guy. He's talking about winning 2 more Super Bowls.
What if he really? Are you sure?
I am pretty sure.
See, I'm not.
I think he thinks of himself, and part of this is based on articles I read on the way out of Seattle, which you have to take with a grain of salt. I understand.
Yeah, you want to go back to DB 2012?
Sure.
The biggest form of humility is to fall on your face. So Russell Wilson has not. I think there has to be a certain amount of humility that's probably hit Russell Wilson that we're not accounting for.
You would think so, but then he comes out like 3 days ago and says, "Hey, I'm trying to win 2 more Super Bowls in the next 5 years."
There's nothing wrong with that.
There's not, and
he played well last year.
I understand that, but you have to put it in context of what I already think I know about Russell Wilson.
That's your own fault. That ain't his.
That's not all my fault. He said a lot of the things that he said.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean he's still that person.
Maybe.
And we're equating the fact that he said 2 Super Bowls in 5 years to the branding stuff and all the stuff we read about with his teammates. And listen,
here's the reason I read
disrespect to Richard Sherman, but it's not like Richard Sherman, who was one of his biggest detractors once he left. Like Bobby Wagner has barely said boo, and it doesn't make it any less true. It's just it's different how they carry themselves, right? I haven't heard. Like what has Cam Chancellor said about Russell Wilson?
Nothing I know of.
So sometimes
here's why, and I'm not even.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Although I do believe there was smoke, right? With how I listened to Marshawn Lynch, one of my favorites. Sit down with Shannon Sharp. I listened very closely to some of the concessions that were made for Russell Wilson. Like I get it.
Yeah,
and that's on Pete.
It is. But here's where I think is the reason I read into the 2 Super Bowls in 5 years with Russell Wilson is because he has talked in the past about being in that category of your Patrick Mahomes and your Tom Brady's and your Peyton Manning's.
He's a quarterback, man.
I understand that. But we talked earlier about self-awareness and self-inventory. At some point, does he have to realize he's not that guy?
Here's the deal. If
is that asking too much? I mean, is that asking too much?
Let me just give you a hypothetical.
All right.
This may be not a great one because they're in the same division as the Chiefs, but Mahomes is playing regardless. So I'm not gonna. If you put Russell Wilson on the Raiders, who have had decent success against the Chiefs, and they have Devontae Adams and a good young receiving core, and you like their tight ends and. Am I laughing that Russell Wilson wants to win a Super Bowl in the next 3 years if he goes to Vegas?
I'm not laughing.
Okay, so why hold it against him?
Hold on. There's a difference between saying, "Hey, my goal is to still win Super Bowls," right? And maybe I'm splitting hairs here. Okay, there's it coming from where he came from and what we've heard and known about him in the past. It's different to say
you keep saying that.
Yeah, I do keep saying it because context for this matters. If Josh Allen comes out and says, "Hey, my goal is to win 2 Super Bowls in the next 5 years. I think that's the type of roster we have." I read that differently than I do Russell Wilson.
So it's different that you're going to pick at his character and what he said because Russell Wilson's actually won a Super Bowl than Josh Allen's actual performance and track record. You're making a distinction.
I am making a distinction, but it's not about the fact that one's won a Super Bowl and one hasn't.
One's younger than the other?
It's that one has thought of himself in a category that was not accurate with what he was. I look at Russell Wilson, and I think of a guy who looks at that Super Bowl and thinks, I'm the reason we won that Super Bowl.
See, that's your fault.
Maybe I'm reading into it. That's fair.
That's your fault. That is 100% your responsibility.
It might be my responsibility. That doesn't mean I'm wrong.
Shane, where's Tim Miles when I need him?
That doesn't mean I'm wrong, though.
Where is Tim Miles when I need him?
Don't put that crap on me.
Yeah, don't put that crap on me.
Does that mean I'm wrong?
How in that?
I think you are.
That's
but it's
fine.
just my personal opinion. Because if I'm Russell Wilson,
mm-hmm.
I don't even know how we got on this.
I don't either.
I want to talk about Caleb Williams. But if I'm Russell Wilson and I've won a Super Bowl and I've been in a championship caliber franchise and I'm in what would someone consider the twilight of my career, I want that guy, if I'm going to go to somebody else's roster, thinking I'm there to win. I don't have any problems with that.
There's a difference between wanting to win and wanting to be the reason somebody wins.
I'm not adding the last part.
I am. That's our distinction here. That's where we separate. I can't imagine.
I can't even get into a Chris Jones versus Leonard Williams debate.
I can't imagine things are going to get any less messy with our guy Matt DeMarinis coming up next year.
Oh, here we go.
On Hurrdat Sports Radio. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. We are joined now on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline by our guy Matt DeMarinis of the White and Blue Review. Matty, what's going on, man?
Have you guys ever heard of a show called Dairy Girls?
I have not. No.
Oh boy. Where?
So it's kind of like it's a kind of an Irish coming of age comedy or whatever. It's on Netflix.
Okay.
And it's really chaotic, in terms of like bickering and whatnot and just snarkiness. But there's this character named Orla who is kind of always encouraging the chaos behind the scenes, never really contributing to it. And that's how I feel. I feel like her when I'm listening to you guys.
You're encouraging the chaos, but not contributing
get him,
to it.
Ravi. I'm like, yeah, get him, DB. Yeah.
Well, you do know your partner in crime over here is nuts, right? Like these hot takes are killing me. Oh, by the way, though, our mutual friend yesterday finally agrees with me and Jacob that with the letdown game. Did you listen to that segment?
Yeah, I heard the gist of it.
So, what letdown or no letdown? Are you Team Ravi or Team DB?
I'm Team DB, no letdown.
Let's go. Let's go.
That's fine. You can all be wrong.
Well
I knew he was going to say this dude's conviction is irrational.
It is. He sticks to his guns.
Man,
it has to be. How do you think I got here?
In general, he's hard to budge in the first place. So it's like when he really
just physically like hard to budge.
Yeah, physically it's hard to move,
Goodness.
Matt, go ahead.
Well, I just felt we talked about this on a post-game pod too. Like we didn't really see a letdown performance. I mean, we didn't see letdown prep either. We thought, they prepared, with some sharpness or whatever, with effort. I didn't see them like coming out and being lackadaisical with details. I just think St. John's played better. Like I thought Creighton executed well enough to win the game. I just didn't think they were very sharp. They missed their wide open threes. They turned the ball over at times, got bogged down in the offense and had shot clock violations that are uncharacteristic of them. Stepped out of bounds, on some kind of set plays that created open shots. Like they just weren't very sharp. I thought St. John's was really tenacious and wanted to win that game, obviously, because basically their season's over if they don't. But I didn't think Creighton let down from an effort or engagement standpoint. I just think they got outplayed. And I think that's not a letdown in my opinion.
So, okay, Maddie, answer me this, because I don't necessarily disagree with anything you said there. I maybe will push back on the execution a little bit. I didn't think they executed quite as sharply as they did, say, against UConn, which I understand is a very high bar. But what do you call it if it's not a letdown game? And I'm open to other interpretations, okay? If it's not a letdown game.
This is called a hill, and he's getting ready to unalive himself.
No, I want other options here. If we're not calling it a letdown game, if there is a situation where, hey, they prepped like they should have, they gave effort like they should have, they just weren't quite as sharp or executed the way they should have, What do we call that? Do we just call it an off day? Do we have to label it? What do you call that?
Well, I mean, because
if the better prepared team always won, you'd never watch.
That's what I'm saying. Here's the thing we get caught up in when we're trying, and this happens year round, sports talk show, fandom, media, whatever it is. We like narrow our lenses to just the team we either are a fan of or we cover, and that's not the full picture.
Mm-hmm.
So like, we're always, if your team loses the game, you're like, what didn't they do X, Y, and Z that could have changed the result? But the other side of it is there's a team on the other side of the floor, court, field, playing surface that's trying to win too. So you have to balance out your columns in terms of what goes into the credit the opponent column versus what goes into the, defect column for the team you're following or rooting for.
Okay, that's fair.
In my opinion, that game had more in St. John's column that they did to win the game than Creighton did to not play up to their standard.
Okay.
In terms of like just coming in saying, hey, we're big shots, we beat UConn, we're going to come in, roll the ball out, and beat this team because their coach just beer batter fried them in the media the other day, and they didn't look super solid against Georgetown. Like, we're going to roll over this team. They don't have anything for us. Like, that mentality wasn't there for Creighton. That's a letdown mentality, in my opinion. They didn't have that present. I thought St. John's just took the game from them.
Okay, I can agree with you that I don't think they came in thinking they were too big for their britches or however you want to phrase it, right? That's like a 1960s phrase that I stole from my mom, I think. But if you're saying that St. John's just played better, Creighton is better than St. John's in a vacuum, right?
Oh my gosh.
No, I'm asking a question. Creighton is not better than St. John's in a vacuum. Is that yes or no?
True, but it's any given Sunday.
Okay,
like
but
any day you can be. It's all about
hold on.
Creighton is better than St. John's, but St. John's was better that day.
Okay, so I agree, but how much of St. John's being better do we have to put on? Like, why were they better? Is there any part of Creighton's performance that allowed them to be better, or did St. John's have an out-of-body experience?
Kind of a little bit of an uncharacteristic experience based on how they played. Yeah.
Although the one thing that was listen, St. John's didn't turn the ball over. Creighton doesn't turn you over anyway. So, right, if you're going to be St. John's and you're going to only have 3 turnovers, you're going to have 24 assists, you're probably playing pretty well. Like, I'm not sure what Creighton is supposed to do about that. But
the 24 assists can be chalked up to the way Creighton's playing defense, though, right?
It could, but when you have a guy that was as hot as he was with St. John's in the way that he was playing, coming off ball screen action, and you play drop coverage, some of those shots, if he's going to make those, what are you supposed to do?
Okay, but let me ask this. Okay, so how many times are we going to allow somebody to get hot from mid-range and just be like, oh, well, it's the drop coverage, and they're going to live with that? Like, how long are we going to continue to live with it? Because it's happened a few times now this year. So, like, at what point are we going to be like, hey, maybe we shouldn't just live with it anymore?
Gosh. I'm sorry, Maddie. I'm sorry.
Is that a fair question?
Right, I'm going to back away and be like, and just cheer right now. Get him.
No, is that a fair question? Is it a fair question to ask? Like, hey, at what point do we not just live with the 14-footers when guys are making it?
Creighton wasn't just – I mean, they didn't just play drop coverage, though. That's the thing. Like, it wasn't like they weren't actively trying to stop St. John's from scoring where they want to score. Like, just look at the type of shots early in the game, the first 5 minutes or so, maybe first 4. I can't remember what the 20-10 encapsulated time-wise, but those shots were just like St. John's coming off simple middle pick and roll, stopping at the elbow, pulling up, raising up, and knocking down pretty uncontested shots.
Yep.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But the rest of the game, like Trey Alexander was getting over those ball screens, Steven Ashley was getting over those ball screens. They were shooting like with guys in their jersey. Kalkbrenner extended his coverage out, further up the lane.
I mean, I watched like 3 or 4. I watched like 3 or 4 pull-ups from the. I watched like 3 or 4 pull-ups from the wing that touched every part of the rim and went in. Like, what?
Yeah.
Okay, but we had this exact same conversation when Butler did it, and at some point, it's not an aberration; it's a flaw.
Well, what happened in the rematch with Butler, and what happened in the first game with St. John?
Yeah, that's fair, but like, are we just okay with the fact like?
Hold up. Law of averages did play out in those styles.
Are we just okay with
Yes.
flipping the coin though, and just saying like, hey, on some of these days, Creighton's just going to give up 90 to a team that's not that good offensively?
That's basketball.
All right. Well, I mean, I don't know. It's a 40-minute game, so you're playing your percentages as much as you possibly can. I mean, because Creighton's not.
Is it not reasonable to ask for them to have a changeup when St. John's does get okay, but not a very good one? Like they hit the off-speed pitches too. So what?
Your argument right now, I think where you're landing or where you're holding your ground is on effectiveness versus attempt. Like they attempted to adjust. St. John's just beat them.
Hey, slot these.
Sometimes it's a tip of your cap. You know what I mean?
Maddie, slot these teams for me in order because they may very well be your 4-1 seeds. Houston, Purdue, UConn, and Arizona.
Purdue, UConn. What do I like better? I'm gonna go. God, I don't want to do this. I'm going to go Arizona over Houston.
Okay. So let me ask you this, because this is kind of my point, and I'm almost glad you asked it that way.
Big Caleb Love guy, huh?
Why don't we?
I'm not.
Why don't we?
No, but I think their ceiling is higher than Houston's, but I think Houston's floor is much, much higher than hers.
Why don't we like Houston more?
I just think it's because like Jamal Shedd has to play. If he doesn't play well, it's a non-starter. Like they're getting run out of the gym. And they don't have.
Matty, they're 24-3.
Yeah, I don't know.
They're 7-3. They have 7 quad 1 wins.
No, I know.
That's the second most in the country behind Purdue and UConn.
But when you look at UConn, Arizona, Purdue, they all have like 1 through 5. They're nasty. Houston's just kind of nasty in the backcourt, and like the wings play hard, but like if you can beat them up inside, you're really gonna have a field day with them. Like I love the way they compete. I love their effort level. I love how like just nasty they are, but like there's holes there that can be exploited.
Okay,
no one in the Big 12. No one in the Big 12 is built to do it. That's what like none of them have like the ability to pop Houston the way that like a UConn, Purdue, or Arizona can offensively.
Is Nebraska better than their metrics?
I feel like they're about right. What are they sitting at now? What's this stretch run done for them? Are they top 50 in both now?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's okay. So I think I'm just pulling up KenPom.
KenPom, they're 34 in KenPom.
Yeah.
No, that's overall, but 38 offensively, 33 defensively.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they're top 40.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's top 40 both, but not top 20 either. I think that makes sense because like I think they're a little bit streaky. I think they can get picked apart a bit defensively, and sometimes they've given up some crazy offensive performances to other teams, and then they can also cook teams while struggle off it. Like there's a balance there in terms of just enough bad with good that I think they fit. Yeah, I think their metrics are spot on right now with the way they're playing. Top 40 in both.
We were kind of picking apart the middle of the conferences the other day. Are you closer to knowing who Providence is or Michigan State?
I have no idea who Michigan State is.
Why does everybody says that? I think that's amazing. I think that's amazing. With Izzo, right?
Yeah, look, if you look at lately, the way they've been lately, not really. Like they've been a double-digit loss team for what, 4 years running, now 5 years running. Like I don't know, man. That's kind of who they've been. They're really talented. They've got a legendary coach, and that there's like when postseason time rolls around, they bring a certain type of level to them that for some reason is a consistent part of their program. But as they're going through it, they've never really been one of those teams that's just going to like dominate a season and be a top 4 or 5 seed or top 3 seed the last few years. This has kind of been who they've been the last this decade at least. I think
these two teams have some eerie similarities, except one has the true point guard. Marquette or Illinois?
Marquette. Illinois is so wishy-washy to me.
God, they're big.
They,
that is a big, long.
Yeah. They're a team that like can win a national championship. They're
Illinois.
Yeah.
You
just don't trust them to win 6 in a row in 3 weeks. That's the thing. But they're like their high end game is built for it for sure. It's just that's the thing with March is like you're national champion and is going to have a high floor. You know what I mean? Like they're going to have because you're not always going to play your best in the NCAA tournament. That's just not realistic. Even I don't
especially with quick turnaround on scouts and stuff. But that's actually where I worry about UConn. But I have to kind of wash that away because they won a title.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like that's a team that's going to play much different over from a Thursday to a Saturday.
You talking about Illinois or UConn?
UConn. But they won. You know what I mean?
That's what I mean. Yeah, no. Like I think their ceiling. I think that maybe the gap between their floor and their ceiling is wide, but their floor. When you look at their floor compared to anyone else's, like it's like that's why you trust them, or why you should anyway. Because and that's the thing with Illinois. It's like do you trust them that on their bad day they'll figure it out? I don't. That's why I think there's only a handful of teams, despite the parity that we've seen this year. There's only a handful of teams that are that are actually capable of going 6 for 6 in 3 weeks.
Then who's the next best team in the Big East?
That's a tough question. I think I don't think Creighton played poorly in Milwaukee. I think they did some things that contribute. I think they had more to do with their loss than Marquette maybe did.
Yeah, because they'll be avenging that one next week.
Yeah, I'm really curious.
Write that one down too.
Yeah, I'm curious to see that rematch because I think Creighton's offense is a lot better than it was in that middle part of the season, a lot more consistent, despite the poor shooting that they just had at MSG. Like I think they're in a better place now than they were the first time these two teams played. But I also think Marquette's kind of coming on, aside from getting pistol whipped at UConn, like they're getting, they've been so. I like that. Yeah, I'm curious to see that rematch. That'll probably. I don't want to cop out and not answer, but I feel like that's going to decide it right there. That might answer it for us.
We're talking with Matt.
Saturday.
We're talking with Matt DeMarinis of the White and Blue Review. A couple Creighton tidbits to clean up here. Sounds like Mac and Creighton are working towards an extension that essentially would finish out his career here in Omaha. Any level of surprise? Is this what you expected to happen all along? Obviously, it's not finalized yet, but assuming it gets done, just how have you processed kind of that latest bit of information that's come out in the whole McDermott saga?
I don't know if I would hatch that chicken just yet. I mean, I don't know if that to me was
premature. You thought?
I don't know if it's premature, but I think there's a PR game being played right now. And I think people need to kind of understand that, there's a Creighton side of it, and then there's a MAC agent side of it.
So let's say the agent's the one that leaked, hey, Ohio State is interested. You're saying maybe Creighton leaks like, hey, we're trying to keep him here.
I don't think the agent necessarily leaked that Ohio State is interested, but I think when you look at like the two big tweets yesterday, or reports, whatever you will, where one was from Tom Chattel saying Creighton's, nearing a deal that will allow Mac to retire at Creighton, which is, I mean, you'll still go through this every single year because buyouts are a thing. And then you had Jeff Goodman, reporting that it's not imminent and everything else. So that's the agent point of view saying, no, like if you're looking for a new head coach, keep these offers coming, drive that number up. And then if you're looking at it from the Chattel tweet point of view, that's Creighton saying, hey, we're locking up our guy. We're doing all we can. Like that's a message to the fan base saying, hey, like back off a second. We're working on it. And then the national point of view is like, no, that number's still rising and the leverage is still being played. So I don't think anything definitive happened yesterday, in my opinion. Based on what I know, I don't think anything definitive happened yesterday. I think it's just a PR game right now.
At the end of the day, how do you think this ends up playing out?
That's a tough prediction because right now what they're dealing with right now is like they're just trying to, like, I don't think it's a distraction right now. I think they're just locked into the season because they have a bunch of guys who probably aren't coming back next year anyway, and they don't really care. Normally this stuff can potentially create a rift where you're like, hey, is this guy really like invested in me right now? That's not going to really exist on this team because of the veteran nature of it. So there's not really, I don't think there's going to be a point where this is part of the narrative of the season. So after the year, it's just really kind of everything's up in the air. I know that recruiting class coming in, they're really excited about it, and I'm sure those guys are excited to be at Creighton. But I also think like they're more excited to play for just that coaching staff and that style of the system. So I think wherever they're coaching next year, those guys will all follow. If I had to bet on it, if you're making me like put something on it, I would bet that Axe back next year. But I don't know. Even if that's what ends up happening, I don't know if any of the things that are actually causing these rifts necessarily are cured or fixed, and we won't be doing this again next year and the year after and however long it goes for,
I like Maddie.
Matt, you mentioned a lot. You mentioned a lot of these guys got a lot.
I'm inclined to more agree than not, Matt.
I'm just telling you how I feel.
Matt, you mentioned a lot of these guys likely not back next year. There's some rumors floating around there about a couple of them that maybe we didn't anticipate being back, kind of giving it another run. Would you be shocked if Ryan Kalkbrenner and or Stephen Ashworth returned for a fifth year?
I wouldn't be shocked if Ashworth returns. Is there a rumor going that he's not going to return?
No, I'm just guys that could return that probably I'm putting out the guys that could return that don't have a clear-cut NBA future necessarily.
Oh, okay. I would be shocked if Kalkbrenner comes back because I think he's the level he's playing at right now. Like, what more can the guy do to prove himself? And then the other part of it is like, depending on how they play in the tournament, that could raise every year we see like the end of the tournament always throws these like draft mocks like completely out of whack. You almost have to ignore the ones that happen for the first, 5 months of the season or 4 months of the season. Because when someone goes off the NCAA tournament, all of a sudden they just shoot up the ladder, and it makes you wonder what evaluators are even looking at in the first place the whole time, because they aren't necessarily outliers; they're just spotlighted more. So yeah, I think Kalkbrenner. I don't know why Kalkbrenner isn't one of these, just based on what he can do, why he doesn't fit organizationally in the NBA right now. I think there's a lot of value to who he is as a player, person, and teammate that doesn't necessarily need to translate into an all-star or an all-defensive guy right away, but can be of value to you when you're filling out your roster because, the teams that win championships are the ones with the strongest, weakest links, right? It's not about necessarily how top-end good you are, but how much stabilization there is, down the rest of the roster. So I think he has a lot of value, and I'm surprised that other centers across the country get more notoriety and love for their skill sets than Ryan Kalkbrenner does. I think it's just because of the aesthetic, maybe. Like, he doesn't always, have the flashiest game, but, man, it's effective. So I'd be shocked if he comes back because I think he's ready to be a pro. I think he is a pro already. I think he plays and prepares like one every day. So, yeah, but I also know, like, he likes it here, and the NIL component is sometimes throws enough of a number at him that it's good. It's going to be better than his first year as a pro, then maybe he'll take it. So yeah, I could see it being up in the air maybe, but it would shock me.
And maybe he likes living in Omaha better than he'd like living in Latvia. We don't know.
Never a dull moment, Maddie. I love it.
That's Matt DeMarinis from the White and Blue Review. Thank you, Maddie. That is our good friend Matt DeMarinis. Coming up next, we're going to do a little Hurrdat hot seat and try and wrap up maybe some loose ends that we've got floating around out here from the entire show.
Need a barber to trim them up.
Yeah, a little bit here. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We got more coming up next. That's Damon Benning. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And our friends over at the Warhorse Sportsbook, whose hotline we were just talking to our friend Matt DeMarinis on.
Are you guys still friends?
Yeah, we fight way worse than that in the group chat all the time. But our friends over at the Warhorse Sportsbook are just constantly trying to give you money. Just constantly. All right. We just did the Super Bowl challenge. All right. Now it's getting that time of year. We're a few days from March. You know what that means? March Madness. The Warhorse. Have you heard of that?
I've heard of that.
Are you guys going? The Warhorse Sportsbook.
Are you guys going?
Is having a $1 million perfect bracket challenge. That's
I feel like there's
seven figures.
I feel like there's a Austin Powers reference in there.
$1 million for a perfect bracket with Warhorse Sportsbook. You get a free entry with being a Warhorse Rewards member and earn additional entries every day from March 1st to March 14th. So I'm giving you a little heads up here. All you have to do is make a $50 sportsbook wager or 50 points on slots and racing. You will be getting entries for each and every one of those tickets. This is only at the casino in Lincoln. So make that short drive down to our friends over in Lincoln, or if you're in Lincoln already, list on KFOR. Perfect. You're already there.
Made it there in 32 minutes yesterday.
That's a good run for you.
It's up from my house. It's 34.
I mean, listen, if I got a chance to win $1 million, I might make it even quicker than that. You never know. Legally, of course, just driving the speed limit. But even if you don't win the $1 million, they still have the prop card challenge where you can win $100,000. I know perfect bracket's hard. It's hard to do. $100,000 for the prop card challenge as well, though. 25 prop questions. If you get 18 or more correct, you win cash or free plays. Same deal with the prop card challenge. You get entries by making a $50 sportsbook wager at the casino in Lincoln. That's the Warhorse Sportsbook. More bets, more glory.
If you win the $1 million, you and I can still be friends.
If I win the $1 million, I'm not talking to you anymore. No, I'm just kidding. Listen, wow. I don't need people coming out the woodwork trying to take my money. That's why I like war.
I don't know. I mean,
are you and Brent still friends?
But you guys, you don't strike me as the type of dude that has picked up a lot of randoms along the way. I imagine your circle is pretty small.
I keep pretty tight. Yeah. That's why Warhorse.
I don't confuse you with having a lot of hanger-oners.
That's why Warhorse is in my inner circle, because they're trying to give me money. They're not trying to take my money. No, listen, you know what's kind of funny, and I'm going to sound like a jerk, but that's fine. That's kind of, I guess, my brand at this point. But I feel like there's a lot of people that kind of want to be part of the circle.
Yeah.
And I'm not interested.
Oh, here we
I'm fairly Old Dominion.
I mean, just irrational.
I'm pretty discerning about who I want to spend time with.
Oh my God.
Man down.
I like my own company a lot.
Oh.
So for me to go outside and spend time with other people, like you gotta make the cut. And most people don't.
Well,
if I'm being honest.
I can't remember what he said the other day that got kind of set the tone for this week.
Who, Sam?
Yes.
I do know what I know, but
I don't remember what he said. It was just yesterday.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was. You were trying to.
Well, I was a little taken aback by when he said something and it kind of caught him off guard and he laughed for a long time. And I was like, I think he just discovered that. And he Googled.
Yeah, we'll have to.
Was it the quarterback thing? Oh, it was the number of points Nebraska had scored.
Yes, the 77 points in a season.
77.
It was in that 95-96 NIT season. They scored,
and that was a really good team.
That was a long time ago. Mikey Moore, Tyrone Lue, a couple NBA guys.
Oh man,
is there? What is happening? Travis says, absolutely no one will know I've won the lottery. There will be signs, but no one is knowing that fact. Yeah, I think that's right. You never know.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't talk to enough people.
I feel like
I do, but I don't. Like, I know I kind of give this illusion like I'm antisocial. I'm not.
A little.
Well, when I'm out, like, you know what I mean? Like, I just pick and choose my spots.
Yeah. No.
Right? Like, if it's just.
You're not going to go out of your way to be social.
You wouldn't give me like a job. I mean, I could drive for you. I could come and mow your yard.
You already have a job.
So $1 million isn't a ton.
That's the thing is I would keep $1 million. I'm working still.
Yeah. But Shane, if I won like a lot more. Like I would find a way to like put you on payroll.
I've got skills. I can do stuff.
Yeah, what are you good at besides producing?
Just producing.
I got to be honest, Shane. I don't know if I'm putting you on payroll.
I mean,
I'd put you.
I'm handy around the house.
He's just funny.
If I've got like, I'm just, I haven't known Shane as long as you have. He's probably not on the putting on the payroll cut. That's all I'm saying. I'm just, I don't. If we're being honest here. You like honesty, you like transparency. I don't know.
He had me on the phone yesterday on the way back from Lincoln.
Ooh, Jay.
Oh, I was crying.
Good old Jay.
It's 2 days in a row.
Is there anything you'd like to maybe catch up on? I know the show kind of.
I'm back interested. I'm still.
Caleb Williams. Is this where you wanted to go?
Well, the draft in general.
Okay. What about it?
Well, I got, it wasn't a nasty DM. It was, why would anybody take Cooper DeJean over Kool-Aid McKinstry? And I'm just like, if Kool-Aid McKinstry is the next corner on the board,
okay.
I think if you watch them, I still would take Cooper DeJean by a fair amount. I understand McKinstry. It's Alabama. Cool name. Do you want to do this, or do you want me to do it?
He's not on the line right. There's nobody on the line right now.
Shane, Ravi would like for you to take Matt.
I didn't say anything about it. It's
Matt's
fine.
Name off the call.
It's fine. I didn't say anything.
But I think it's going to be that. I think whether it's McKinstry and Coop, Super Coop, DeJean, or.
Here's I'm going to pick a bone with the Athletic right now. We love our friends over the Athletic Room.
I do.
We're going to talk to Mitch Sherman. We're talking to Mitch this week, right, Shane?
That is correct.
So here's my problem. So I'm looking at a mock draft they've got here because I wanted to see where they had Cooper DeJean going. That's fine. And I was searching by cornerback. They don't have him listed as a cornerback. They have him listed as a defensive back.
That's okay. Might just be a typing error.
Is it?
I don't know.
I don't think it is. That feels like we think he might be playing safety. He's not safety, though. He's a quarterback.
Who knows with so many defensive backs in the backfield? You know what I mean?
You're trying to bail him out here?
No, I'm in the salute. You know me. Like, okay. I'm always trying to think what the other person may be thinking.
Okay. He's listed as fifth among cornerback / defensive backs, apparently.
Okay, so who is he behind?
So he's behind McKinstry.
Okay.
He is behind Nate Wiggins at Clemson.
Okay.
They got Nate Wiggins going their first cornerback off the board, so I don't know how I feel about that.
Okay.
They've got Terrion Arnold from Alabama.
It's tough.
He's the second corner off the board. They've got Mitchell from Toledo as the third cornerback off the board. Those are all going from 15 to 19, so they got a little run there. And then they've got McKinstry at 22. And then they've got Cooper down at 31 to the 49ers, which I wouldn't be mad at. I'd take that all day, but I think they're maybe being a little disrespectful there. Is that the injury, or are we just not sure?
Yeah, that's a decent cornerback group. About elite. But I think once you get the run on the first one, they may go.
I think it's a quality, but not a super high end. I don't think you have that top end guy. Right?
Yeah. Who's your third quarterback coming off the board?
Quarterback?
Yeah.
So,
assuming you go Williams and May in some order.
Are we making the assumption that May goes too? There's a little bit of a run on Daniels.
So why do you like Daniels over Penix?
I don't. I like Penix over everybody except for Caleb Williams. And like watching them play, I think I like Penix more than Caleb Williams. I know that's not a popular opinion. I think Caleb Williams has more overall talent, but just hitting my eye, I like the way Michael Penix plays the position. I don't know if there's
I watched a podcast on SC's offense and just how quarterback centric it was, like just how many plays Caleb Williams had to actually make. And I don't know if I'm listening to learn, but he had some good wide receivers too.
Can I be honest? He reminds me of a less dysfunctional Johnny Manziel than he does anything else.
Yeah, but isn't that what the league kind of is a little off script?
That's a fair question. But
I mean, when's Mahomes at his best? Although they did shorten up their passing game a little, but his improvisation.
Okay, you have to take the Super Bowl out of it. The rest of the year, he wasn't doing a lot of that. That's the reason they won the Super Bowl. They got to it because he was a lot of in-system stuff. I don't know. We can hit that up coming up next as we wrap up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're wrapping up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. And if you're ready for a game-changing experience, you need to head over to the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, Omaha's premier sports bar, because they're now hiring at both the La Vista and Gretna locations. If you haven't heard, it's more than just a sports bar. From elevated pub fare, handcrafted pizzas, to a diverse range of craft spirits and classic cocktails, live events and shows, there's something for everyone at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Currently, they're hiring for all positions at both locations. So join the team today and be a part of the excitement. You can visit in person between anytime this week between the hours of 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. at the Gretna location for on-the-spot interviews and hiring, or visit hurrdatsports.com/careers to apply. Make every game day unforgettable at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, where sports, food, fun, and live entertainment come together. All right, so we were having a little conversation about Caleb Williams before we hit the break there, and my concern with him is that the off-scripted dominates so much of what he does, off the script, right? You mentioned, hey, isn't that kind of what the NFL is now? Fair point, but I think you have to be able to do the on-script stuff first before the off-script stuff works. Is that a reasonable?
I mean, maybe.
Because I think we look at Mahomes and say, hey, he won the Super Bowl and off-script stuff. Yes, but we also mentioned in the same sentence, how did he get there?
Yeah, but I think they had to go to some of that quick passing game with some of those West Coast components.
Because of the
like
receivers.
RPOs. Yeah, because
absolutely.
Of the RPO.
But also because of the receivers, you mentioned how good the receivers were at SC. You can't do a lot of that off-script stuff.
They made some good it did seem like they were running wide open sometimes too. I need to go back and I will zero in.
Mm-hmm.
But my thing with Caleb Williams isn't the talent. I want to be those are hard. Those interviews are weird.
Yeah. No, super weird. I don't question the talent either. My question is, can he stay on script enough to make the off-script effective?
As a quarterback, and I get the slotted money.
Mm-hmm.
But like the perks and the deals and stuff like that, and obviously he's going to have
a lot of opportunities.
An agent,
mm-hmm.
and I get it. Like on a much smaller scale. I remember I used to always ask Kugler about getting an agent.
Mm-hmm.
Some people do, some people don't.
Yeah.
Right? Some people are like, the agent is good. It can get your business out there, this, that, and the other. Some people are like, no, tape. Some people are saying, oh, no, 3% or 4% or 5%, keep it. Would you do it over? Anyway, I say all that to say, like if I have if I have a contract or something I need to look at, like I have a guy,
mm-hmm.
right? Like Adam, he's going to look at it and he's going to say, yay, nay, good, do this, tweak this, whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't have an agent. But if it's in the minutia or I have like tricky stuff,
mm-hmm.
like I can obviously consult. So if I'm a quarterback and I'm not going to hire an agent, and contracts are the way that they are,
mm-hmm.
somebody has to be looking at that.
Sure.
But did Lamar Jackson all of a sudden set the trend because he got his money without hiring an agent? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, does that make him more or less desirable to work with as the top pick in the draft?
I would say less.
I don't, you know what I mean? Like,
I would guess.
You better have all that. And they typically do before
mm-hmm.
the draft even happens. And you get it inked relatively soon, but you better know that.
My guess would be less desirable to work with because GMs and front office personnel and whoever are used to dealing in a certain way.
Yeah.
And whether it's for the positive or negative, differentiating from that is uncomfortable for them, right? So it doesn't matter if Caleb Williams is easy to work with or not. It matters that it's not the way they typically do business. That's what matters in this situation. Now, it should matter less, like you mentioned, in the top of the draft because slotted money, it should be an easier negotiation. than it is with a Lamar Jackson, for instance, right? I think Lamar Jackson, despite the fact that he got his money, that made his situation more difficult, I think.
I mean, it took a long time.
It took a lot longer than it probably should have, considering what he's been as a player when healthy.
Yeah.
Right? And so you look at that, but he goes, hey, he ended up getting his money. He didn't have to give up a percentage. The place where it makes sense to me to give up the agent is if you're a max player in the NBA. Why are you giving away money if you're a max player in the NBA? Like, you get what you get. Like, it's pretty predetermined. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if you're LeBron James, why do you have an agent? Maybe now it makes a little more sense because you're dealing with shorter deals and stuff like that.
Well, I think Rich Paul's his boy. That's an interesting example.
Well, maybe LeBron's
clutch,
a bad
right?
example because it's his boy and he's trying to help his business get off his ground and whatever. But if you're Steph Curry, right? He's not really tied in with an agency the way that LeBron is, right? Although he's definitely not part of the, whatever. They try and differentiate LeBron from the agency as much as possible, but nobody believes it. Steph Curry doesn't really have a tie-in with an agency. I mean, he's got an agent, right? But for his basketball deals, why is he given a cut of that? Is it so he gets him the other deals?
I don't know, but sometimes there's times where I wish I had one.
To like advocate for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I get it.
So, and maybe I guess it would have to fit the athlete or the work or whatever it is that they do, their personality.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Because there's probably a fine line where you have to be so good where you don't need to self-promote. But let's say you're not comfortable in terms of getting in the weeds or selling, where it's like, yeah, you handle that. Let me know. I'll take a look at it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a time commitment. I don't know.
Daniel says maybe it's worth the money just not to have to deal with it. You still need the lawyers for the contract and everything.
the peace of
mind.
Just
the convenience of just that's not I don't have to worry about it.
Well,
but then you still have to find somebody that you trust. That's the other problem.
Yeah.
Because for me, if somebody's getting a piece of my money, right?
I mean, if it's Daniel and it's like, okay, Justin Fields going to Pittsburgh potentially, those numbers kind of are what they are.
Yeah.
Who has the contract? Who talks about whether they lock him up long term after what's left on the rookie deal? Because I would think that has to factor into Fields' decision making. Will he re-sign? Or do you think he's so raw he's going to have to bet on himself?
I was like, do you think he knows if he wants to re-sign somewhere yet?
I don't know. Like usually it's with 1 year left on the deal. You're like, well, is he going to re-sign? And sometimes you see it in the NBA more.
Yeah.
Where a guy will roll the dice and they'll sign him for hire, knowing he's not going to sign a long-term deal. But I don't know. I think with where it would behoove people is like with this running back spot, right? My guy's out there that I think is one of the better underrated running backs in the league, Josh Jacobs, who I constantly talk about. Saquon Barkley's out there.
There's a lot.
Eckler.
Eckler's going to be out
Pollard,
there.
Guys like that.
Yeah, it's a huge market.
I don't,
So Jacobs is still in the discussion even after the year that he had?
He should have been locked up. But you know how I feel. I've been saying this about Jacobs for 2 years.
Oh, I know.
I think Henry's UFA.
Yeah, and you know what? He basically did his swan song thing to the Titans fan base the last game last season.
I don't know how much you like DeAndre Swift.
I love Swift. But
J.K. Dobbins is out there.
If I'm Swift, I think Philly finds a way to bring him back. But Philadelphia has a lot of other problems.
Yeah, they've got some other issues that Swift doesn't fix.
Which I can't believe how quickly they disintegrated internally. But it just furthers my point that I always talk about. Never undersell chemistry.
Well, and
even more so and people say this about the pro. Oh, it's pros. You get paid. Be a professional. Mindsets are different in 2024 than let's say they were in 2009. Like people are just inherently more selfish.
Well, and okay, so if here's the other problem with the professional locker room, right? Yeah, everybody's getting paid. Now everybody's getting paid the same. I mean, that's the first place
Yeah, but that's understood.
It is understood, but that doesn't factor into how some guys act sometimes.
I think Philadelphia had so much success early and the guys were young. don't think the culture was set yet.
Okay.
Like, I don't think there was really an ego way yet.
So as opposed to Detroit,
where
they kind of had to build to it.
They're all kind of together.
They had to work towards it.
Yep.
And Campbell's a culture guy.
Yep, it's different.
Whereas Sirianni's a offensive guru guy.
Yeah. Like,
okay.
Do you know what I mean?
No, I get what you're saying.
So
I just had to give the other example to kind of wrap my mind around what you meant.
So I think like the Chiefs, and Andy Reid may be too far the other way as let me use Mike Tomlin. Okay. Doesn't have the championship cachet that, let's say, Andy Reid has, but tenure, right? Early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
I think they know if somebody's going to fit in that culture.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't think Philadelphia knows that.
And maybe they let some guys go that did fit in the culture.
Well, I mean, could Jalen Hurts really control A.J. Brown the same way, like, let's say, Patrick Mahomes could offset Kelsey?
Well, Brady and Gronk are a really good example of this, right? Gronk came into the league as this total wild card. Nobody wanted to touch him. They thought he was this total loose cannon, whatever. Injury risk. Arizona. Yeah. Total, like, injury risk. Nobody really knew what to do with him. Between Brady and Belichick, Gronk never had a single issue in New England.
Shane, did you want Jacobs to be a Raider?
I like Jacobs.
Man, he's sweet.
He's pretty good.
I don't know what the hell they were doing with him last year, but whatever, I guess. I mean, if you just sign the guy, get it going.
I mean, what were they doing in general last year? That's
the real question.
What's
the Giants' offense going to look like potentially without Saquon Barkley?
It's the Daniel Jones show, baby. Danny Dimes. That's the show for today. We'll be back tomorrow. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. This is Hurrdat Sports Radio.